also with the Pakistani government is something that is very, very important for us. And I'm also very happy that today it's not only me saying this, but I have two senior experts with me from Denmark to also chip in and join some very fruitful discussions that I'm sure we will be having this afternoon. Denmark, I don't know what your perception is about my country. Definitely, it's a very different country than Pakistan, right? I mean, we are a very small country. You are a very big country. Our population is only 5.7 million people. Pakistan has 240 million people. So we're very different. But we face, both of us, a world of climate change. And it's important for all of us to take action when it comes to climate change. What makes Denmark stand out, and what you can say is our claim to fame, is that we have actually completed a green transition. We have, within the last 40 years, basically transformed our energy sector from being dependent fully on oil and coal to now being dependent on wind and solar and water and biomass. That has taken us 40 to 50 years, and we have learned a lot. We have faced a lot of challenges along the way. And we have committed ourselves to give our lesson learned away to countries that are now starting to do their green transition. And Pakistan is one of those countries. So we have committed ourselves. We have signed. Our minister for climate change was here last year, and he signed an agreement with his ministerial counterparts in Pakistan saying that we need to work together on this. There's no need for Pakistan to make the same mistakes that we have done. So learn from us. We are here. And that is also why we have this close collaboration with SDPI and other institutions in Pakistan, because we are here, we are available to work with Pakistan on bringing forward the green transition and the fight against climate change. And we also have the solutions. Our companies in Denmark have gained the right technologies the last 40, 50 years. So when it comes to wind energy, when it comes to energy efficiency, being in the industry or being in the buildings, we know how to do it. And we can call our companies to work with Pakistani companies as well. I have lived now in Pakistan for almost 2 years. Every day I wake up being extremely proud, being extremely humble that I am the one chosen to represent Denmark in Pakistan for some years. And I have seen, and I have lived in Pakistan now for almost 2 years, witnessing the most beautiful places on earth, met the most wonderful and hospitable people I've ever met, tasted the best food I've ever tasted in my life. So I feel very privileged and humbled that I have the choice and the opportunity to live here. But I've also seen some challenges. I'm not blind that Pakistan is facing issues. And these years is kind of a double crisis. It's an economic crisis coupled with a climate change crisis. When I landed in Pakistan in September 2022, it was in the middle of the worst flood that I've ever seen, and I guess that anyone have ever seen, right? 1/3 of Pakistan was underwater. Millions after millions of people were, out of homes. They lost their crops, their fields, their livestock, their everything. And when I saw that with my own eyes, traveling the province of Sindh in those days, I promised that whatever I can do and whatever I can generate of attention and visibility and support to fight climate change, I will do. And I've also been to the northern region, the beautiful, beautiful mountains of the Himalayas and the Hindu Kush. And I've seen in front of my eyes how the complete ecosystems are changing, how glaciers are melting, how villagers, farmers, all of a sudden cannot farm their fields that they are done for generations and centuries because climate change is happening right here in front of our eyes. So Pakistan facing both climate change and economic crisis. You need to activate all the tools in the toolbox to fight that. And carbon market is one of those tools. It's only one of many, many tools, but it can be a very important tool. And it's very important, at least, that Pakistan creates the right framework and create the right expertise and competences to also benefit from carbon trading and establishing carbon markets in Pakistan. So that is the background why we work so closely with you, SDPI. Just to balance expectations a bit, I somehow hear that, carbon trading is somehow an easy fix. It's going to solve everything as long as you can just sell some carbon credits, right? Sell some emission reductions and you'll earn a lot of dollars and then you're home safe. That is not the case. I mean, I don't think you can consider the carbon markets as an ATM where you go and just take out foreign currency, right? I don't think you should consider carbon trading in that way. I think you should consider carbon market as one tool in the toolbox to get emission reductions and green projects off the ground that otherwise wouldn't occur. So it's a tool to fight climate change. It's a tool to reduce emissions. It's not a money machine. But business leaders, role models, those who pave the way and inspire others can use this as one of the elements to get projects and pave the way for a greener Pakistan. And my two colleagues here can elaborate more on that. But there's no doubt if you look on Pakistan's economy right now and the business sectors, when you look at the heavy industries like the steel, the fertilizers, the cement, carbon trading and emission reduction can, be one element in fuel substitution and moving away from coal and oil into greener fuels. It can also be a way of getting waste handling on a better track. I always get very, very depressed when I drive to Rawalpindi, Lahore, Karachi, and see all those dump sites and, see those open landfills. And, Pakistan needs to get ahead of that and consider waste as a resource instead of just something that you dump. You need to recycle, and those things that cannot be recycled can actually be used as an energy source. I also get super depressed when I drive from here to Lahore and I see the farmers just burning their fields after the harvest. Not only is it polluting the air, but it's also just burning money, right? I mean, straw, bagasse, rice husk, all these things, can be collected and used as a valuable energy source. So that, the agricultural waste is also a resource that should be used in a more efficient way than just burning the fields. We also see in Pakistan right now that the electricity, the power prices, energy prices are on a rise. It's getting super expensive, not only for households, but also for industries to buy power. So it's getting good business to save on the energy. I mean, if you use less electricity, it's basically money in the bank. And you can actually build up what we call energy saving models, ESCO models, where you use this in your business model the money you save, the financing you save on not buying electricity can be used in a production way and get new investments up and running. The last thing I would like to mention is the forestation projects, the long-term sinks products where you try to, get forest either back or new forest in to absorb some of the carbon that would otherwise be emitted freely into the atmosphere. That is also something that can be used in a carbon trading mechanism model. So please, we need to convince everyone that Pakistan should, get the right framework, the policy measures in place so that you can benefit from carbon markets to get green projects off the ground that otherwise would not be the case. And going green is not only for the climate, it's the main part of it, but going green is also good business. It could save a lot of precious foreign exchange if Pakistan shouldn't buy all that oil and coal from abroad and could use the wind and the sun that you have an abundance of already. And it would give you a competitive edge if those who manufacture and produce in Pakistan could say that they manufacture and produce in a country that is in the forefront of sustainable distribution networks and this, basically having a green value chain for their production. So all these things matters in the world that we see today. So I hope that you have gotten some tools. You will get some tools during this sessions this afternoon, and I hope we will engage in very fruitful discussions. And hope that we can put Pakistan on a greener track, right? So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And every time we have you, you always share a message of positivity and hope. So it's not always, gloom and doom. There's a positive aspect attached to the climate action as well. So thank you once again. Also, regarding carbon markets, so these are basically the carbon pricing instruments. We do know that Pakistan has made several pledges internationally and also several commitments, not just pledges, but commitments also in context of how Pakistan will be contributing towards fighting climate action. Although our contribution to the global greenhouse gas mix is negligible and it will not be up to the level that, other countries have been doing so. But yet we are the most vulnerable and we are being affected from climate change. So this is one of the tools, as His Excellency mentioned, to strengthen climate action and to also adapt to the climate change. So these mechanisms enable governments and non-state actors to trade greenhouse gas emission credits, and the aim is to achieve climate targets and implement climate actions cost effectively. One of the I also sometimes term these as one of the key climate diplomacy instruments or tools that can help engaging countries to strengthening climate action as a whole, globally. So thank you so much. Now with this, I would like to request our next speaker, Mr. Soren Lutken. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So Chief Carbon Market Specialist, United Nations Environment Programme, Copenhagen office. So over to you, please.
Thank you. I think I will touch on the equitability topic, which is the topic of today's workshop and which we haven't really touched on yet. And maybe, even though Jakob doesn't paste gloom and doom, but so maybe that's my job. I think you all know the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals that we're all trying to achieve. It's also a fact that they are not equally easy to achieve and they have different importance. One thing is a fact: if we do not get the climate change right, we forget about the rest. So all the nice goals that we have will be completely wiped out if we do not get climate change on track. So that's one thing. when we talk about carbon markets, I think it's also correct what the ambassador is laying out, that it's not a silver bullet. It's not the answer to everything. I'm not sure whether, have any of you read Mr. Soleri's article from yesterday? If you haven't, you should. It is absolutely excellent. And it gives an excellent background on where we are standing on carbon markets and what kind of strategies that a country like Pakistan could or should adopt. Carbon markets have been around for quite a while. The idea of carbon markets is in fact not exactly to reduce emissions, but to shift emissions from one place to another. So the credits that are generated from carbon markets are normally going to offset emissions that continue elsewhere. So if emissions are reduced in Pakistan, it means they are not reduced on the location of the buyer of the credits. You can consider that, well, in a perspective of equitability, maybe some would say, well, that depends on the price. How much do we pay for the credits we are buying compared to what does it cost at our home to reduce emissions? And the whole idea about the carbon markets is that we are buying emissions reduction in countries where emissions reduction is cheaper than in the countries that are buying. So typically it's cheaper, at least the idea is it's cheaper to reduce emissions in Pakistan, so therefore we don't reduce emissions in Denmark. We don't have to reduce emissions in Denmark because we have to, but we're not buying credits anymore. But other countries are using that logic, which we had back under the Kyoto Protocol, where we used carbon credits to achieve our compliance objectives. Whether that is fair, that's, well, in the eye of the beholder. If you think it's fair that Pakistan is the host of cheaper emissions reduction projects. I think when that is the history of the carbon market, and I think that the general notion in Pakistan is that Pakistan missed the train on the first carbon market in the CDM, and that's what we hear when we come here and talk to people, that we missed the train on CDM. We are certainly not going to miss the train on the Paris Agreement and the Article 6, which is sort of the successor of CDM. I think it's important that, but it's not just about getting on the train. You need to be sure that you get on the right train. And the right train is not necessarily to be the host of projects that are cheap emissions reduction options that can be exploited by buyers of credits. It may rather be, and that is sort of the good practice advice that we are trying to provide also, is that countries that are selling their credits from emissions reduction projects should not sell cheap emissions reduction to buyers. In fact, they should sell expensive emissions reduction. And if we look at fairness and equity, again, what we see in the market right now is that buyers, there are not that many out there yet. And we're talking about the compliance market, so Article 6 in the Paris Agreement, not the voluntary carbon market. I can mention that later. But the few buyers that are in the market buying credits, either for compliance, but actually mostly not for compliance, are paying around 20 euro per ton. But what are we benchmarking against? What are the reduction costs in those countries that we are looking at? Well, the reduction costs are around $100 per ton. So do we think that is fair? Are we promoting equity by selling out of Pakistan's carbon budget at $20 when the buying countries are actually facing domestic reduction costs of $100? I know there are people who would say that, well, we're never benchmarking against our own costs, we're benchmarking against the market price. Well, who sets the market price? And in that regard, Pakistan is not alone. You would see there's a lot of countries that are embarking on this new compliance market coming up. And those countries are setting their own policies for how do we sell credits? What do we charge for the credits? And unfortunately, we are seeing a race to the bottom. That countries are trying to underbid each other again for the fear of missing out, the fear of missing the train. So we don't want to miss the train. We want to get on this train. And I'm just sort of raising a small flag and say, well, be sure you get on the right train. It may not be the first that departs. And the carbon budgets that we are administering don't disappear. The emissions reduction commitments of developed countries do not disappear. They will also need to buy credits 10 years, maybe 20 years from now. You don't need to sell the credits tomorrow. But that's all for sort of the strategic considerations of the host government, the Pakistan government. Where do we want to be in this market? Do we want to be in the market now or in 5 years? One thing that Mr. Suleri has pointed out in his article is, well, CBAM is also an issue here. I don't know if you know about CBAM, but the fact that when you export your products to Europe, but it's coming up in other countries as well, means that you will meet a carbon border. And if your product is not produced on the basis of technologies that are comparable to the technologies used in the countries you're exporting to, you may face a carbon tax. And you face a carbon tax at European prices, not at the 20 euro per ton price you might face in Pakistan as production cost. So if you're a textile factory and you want to engage in carbon market, you should think twice whether you want to reduce your emissions for your own consumption or you want to reduce your emissions for somebody else. If you reduce your emissions and sell your credits, you will meet the carbon border and they would say, well, yes, you reduced emissions, but you've sold it. So it doesn't count in your account anymore. So rather, if you're in a tech, and then of course, then they will charge you $100 per ton of carbon when you meet the carbon border because you haven't reduced emissions for yourself. So keep your reductions. Don't sell them for 20 because it will cost you 100 if you do. Again, that is strategy. And you need to be aware of how these things work. And it's complex. And for you, describing it for people to understand it is even more challenging. And I don't know how you do that. But I will again point to Mr. Suleri because that was a really, really excellent article. But this is complex, but it's really, really important. Also in an equity discussion, where exactly do we want to be and how much do we want to provide service to countries that want to reduce emissions? And then the final word on the voluntary carbon market. We know that the voluntary carbon market has been active here in Pakistan for, well, a couple of years back. I think everybody talks about a project in the mangrove project in Sindh. And a deal that was made at $5 per ton, and that was not fair, and the consultants took half of it. And it's not a good precedent for a voluntary carbon market promotion. But the voluntary carbon market has one advantage over the compliance market, at least for now. It does not require corresponding adjustments. And what is that? Well, Pakistan has an emission budget self-declared, submitted to UNFCCC. It's called the Nationally Determined Contributions. And in that, it says that Pakistan will emit 1,603 million tons of CO2 in 2030, minus 15%, because that is the commitment that Pakistan has taken on upon itself. If you sell on Article 6 your credits, you would have to deduct that from your budget, so Pakistan can emit that amount less than before. So that mechanism doesn't exist for the voluntary carbon market. That means you can sell the credits and there's no accounting for it in the national accounts. Yet, I know that the voluntary carbon market proponents are actually trying to insist on also having corresponding adjustments implemented, but so far at least it is not the case. What you can use the voluntary carbon market for is massive reforestation, afforestation. There's large corporations globally that are looking for that option. I know the voluntary carbon market has gone through a credibility crisis over the past year or so, because the avoided deforestation projects didn't really work. But afforestation and reforestation does. And there are corporations that are willing to buy. So on that positive note, when that can be large scale investments, and it's something that is really necessary also in Pakistan, and also for the flooding that the ambassador experienced here 2 years ago arriving. A lot of that was caused by the lack of trees. We need to get the trees back, and that could be a source of financing for that. I think I will just stop with that and leave the word to our last speaker.
Thank you so much. I think hard facts are also, need of the hour. And along with the journalists, we also have representatives from the industry who have also joined us online and in person here. So thank you so much for stating those facts and for also indicating that we have to get on the right train. And also, we have to reduce our own emissions as well if we want to adjust that equity factor, if we are finally moving on towards carbon markets. So thank you once again. I think before I request Mr. Nadeem for his remarks, we have a few questions from the journalist community here. So keeping in view the time also, I'll request journalists, if they have their questions, we can take 3 questions for now. And I'd request you to please be brief and be, stay on the topic for now, so the ambassador and our guests, they are able to address your queries. Ji. So we have Ali and anyone from the journalist community? Ji. Okay, so Ali, we can start from you.
My question is that why jargon that is used during the conversations on carbon market is so tough and so technical? By the time the bureaucracy in Pakistan, or even the experts in Pakistan, when they are able to grasp the concept, the process is so delayed, or they are so much involved in that the real essence of the communication or that negotiation that gets vanished. Why is it so, and how Pakistan can do better, improve their understanding of how they can catch up with that technical jargon and those bottlenecks, which is one of the key problems for us to, very efficiently perform the carbon market negotiations.
So maybe we can take the questions first, and then I'll request you to respond. Ji, sir, please.
My name is Yes, Pakistan has very minimal point in the carbon emission, disrupting the environment and ecology of the globe. But most affected one because of the other emission of the carbon as a residue into air, polluting very badly. All the responsibles means developed industrialized countries have a sense to reduce it seriously.
Ji, please Mike यहाँ पे दे दें please. Yeah, okay.
Sir, as you said that we have 40 years of experience to go to green transition, tell us about Denmark carbon caps, like how the law is there about carbon market, and where is Pakistan standing? Where is the gap? Like why Pakistan did not sell their carbon credits?
Okay.
जी, जी.
Uh,
So just 3 questions initially, and then we'll take your questions also. पहले वो इसका response करते हैं, and then जी, Your Excellency and Mr. Soren, if you would like to address the questions. So we have had 3 questions. First one from Ali Jaber, that regarding technical jargons. And second one regarding, so your question was basically that Pakistan's contribution is negligible, yet we are the most affected ones. So
Of the major part of the emission disrupting the ecosystem and the whole
जी जी.
polluting polluting the environment and the whole atmosphere.
So what you are trying to ask is that the developed countries' responsibility to reduce their carbon emissions. Okay. So yes. So what he says that, this is something that's been done by developed countries, so they should be the ones reducing their carbon emissions. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Yes, please.
I think there may be 5 countries on the planet that cannot claim to be having a minor share of the emissions and being unevenly affected by climate change. The rest, in fact, can, with Denmark being a case in point. We emit 0.01% of global emissions. Why on earth are we bothering with this? And that is not an argument. I mean, everybody has to join. The ambassador mentioned before that we have been developing our green economy over the past 2 years. And again, to the equitability, unfortunately, Pakistan does not have that luxury. You do not have 40 years. That's just a fact. It's not fair, but that's a fact. If you wait for the developed countries to reduce emissions, when you, together with the rest of us, will be wiped out by climate change. So it's not, and it has been a discussion in global climate negotiations for the past 30 years. We finally got rid of that discussion, more or less, with the Paris Agreement, that all countries have to participate. We cannot just sit and wait for the developed countries to act first, and then we take the developing countries afterwards. We don't have time. That said, the US has reduced emissions by 20%. Denmark has reduced emissions by 50%. Europe generally has reduced emissions by 35%. It's not that we are not reducing emissions. Denmark has a net negative emissions target, negative emissions by 2050. Finland has a net negative emissions target by 2040. So we are racing forward with emissions reduction, but we don't have the luxury of letting developing countries develop without also considering emissions reduction. It is simply not an option, unfortunately.
And just to supplement, Søren, I completely agree. You cannot just say, saving the climate and fighting climate change, someone else has to do it, right? We all need to take action on this one. And it goes also in your household, right? I mean, try to take your bicycle instead of a motorbike, right? Try to change your lifestyle. Take a responsibility, right? It goes for everyone. And, We all lived here in January, didn't we? I mean, we all woke up every morning with a headache because of the smog. And that is not Denmark's fault, right? That is because, you know, I mean, you burn your fields, you use the most bad coal in your brick kilns, and you, I mean, and it's not Denmark's fault that you throw out that rubbish and garbage in your rivers, right? I mean, come on, guys, take responsibility. And then I don't like this way of saying that fighting climate change and reducing carbon emissions is a burden. It's something, oh, it's so tough and we cannot really. No, it's an opportunity. Come on, it's good business. Denmark, honestly speaking, you know, we didn't go on this track to save the climate. We went on this track to save our economy because we couldn't afford buying all that oil from the Middle East and all that coal from South Africa and Indonesia as you are now. And you can't either. I mean, you cannot afford it. You use all your foreign exchange on that instead of importing material and machinery that, you know, and attracting investors. But you buy oil from the Middle East and you buy coal from South Africa and Indonesia when you could use the sun and the wind to generate your electricity and your, you know, whatever you use energy for, right? So it's good business. And another thing is, you know, I mean, you being dependent on other countries for your energy resources is not very wise, you know. It's also a matter of your independence and your security. If you depend your energy sector and everything that it has to be manufactured or heated up in this country from the Middle East or from Iran, and then one day, you know, you face challenges with those countries, what will you do then? But if you're able to you produce your own electricity, you're in a much safer and better position, right? So all this energy efficiency, renewable energy, going green, it is good business, it's politically wise, and you're also saving the planet for your dear children, right? So it's not something that you can just ask someone else to do, it's something that each of us needs to do, right?
This weakness can be converted into strength.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you, Soren, and you know, for the remarks. So actually, now every part of the world is getting affected from climate change. You know, you cannot say that this is something that's happening in Pakistan only. This is something that's happening in Europe as well, in America. So everywhere, climate change knows no boundaries. But the situation in context of, you know, developing countries are not in a better position to cope with climate crisis, that, you know, we had floods, our institutional capacity was not up to the mark to you know, save lives and secure the livestock and you know, the overall infrastructure. So that's why we needed aid and we needed support in during that disasters. But now I think Pakistan needs to up its game of, you know, even we shouldn't be somebody demanding for, you know, aid only. We should be somebody taking action and then going forward to demanding what is needed. We need the capacities, we need the knowledge transfer, right? And we need the developed countries to support us, like Denmark is supporting Pakistan through capacities, to knowledge transfer, and even through reconstruction projects wherever it is needed. So I think this should be the approach. And regarding Ali's question, so one of the key challenges that the journalist community here also face, you know, in our local language, climate change, for global warming, for heat stress. So the terminology is, there's just one common word that's used, mosmiyati tabdili, you know, for explaining all the crisis. So the local terminology is not very well defined when we are talking about carbon markets. So it gets difficult for the journalist community as well to communicate the concept to the local people. And even especially now, it's not just the industry that's going to be affected by when CBAM is there. We are going to have a farming community who will be facing the, you know, brunt if they do not realize what is happening, you know, what are carbon markets. So in that perspective, again, communicating to the local people, communicating this entire process and how it is communicated, that will play an important role. So with this, I think I would now request Mr. Nadeem Nawaz. I know we have a few questions, but maybe after Mr. Nadeem's remarks, we can take more questions. So Mr. Nadeem Nawaz, Special Advisor and Country Manager at Global Cooperation in the Danish Energy Agency. I request you for your address, please.
Much. I think I have a presentation, something like that. And I'd also prefer to stand up during presentation if it's okay. Apparently, I'm the only one with presentation. I was told it was okay. I hope you can hear me. So if you can just have the presentation. Thank you so much for inviting me. I should start by saying I'm not a carbon market expert. That's Søren. So if you have any questions related to that, that's Søren. I am, however, energy planner. So I specialize in long-term energy planning, focusing specifically on renewable energy, on energy efficiency and CO2 reductions. So my topic is about this. This is actually a presentation from the climate conference in December in Dubai, where we presented some long-term scenarios up to 2050 for the Pakistani power system. So not energy system, but power system, on how to decarbonize, what is required. And this was in a close collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Change and the Ministry of Energy in Pakistan, and also the related energy authorities. So we actually developed two scenarios based on the inputs from especially the Ministry of Energy, where we looked at, is it possible for Pakistan to become carbon neutral in terms of the power supply by 2050? Because we know that you have very ambitious climate change policies. You're expected to reduce carbon emissions, I think it's 50% by 2030. So that's really ambitious. And I think the power sector is really important in that regard. So that was the task. So that's one of the scenarios. And the other scenario requested by the Ministry of Energy is actually, please consider the current economic situation in Pakistan. With the constraints on the economy, if you sort of factor that in, then how would a capital restricted future look for Pakistan? Coming from Denmark, we of course consider the economic situation, but I think it's the first time actually we've been asked to develop a scenario where we put in a restriction like this. But I think it's very valid to do it in the current economic situation for Pakistan. So we use, of course, the data provided by IGCEP. I think most of you working in the energy and climate sector in Pakistan know what the IGCEP is. It's the in the generation capacity plan for Pakistan up to 2031. I know that a new one is being submitted, or maybe already submitted actually 2 days ago. So this is based on the old data. But we used it because we need to have, of course, valid data when we do scenarios and we do projections like these. Data is really the king here. You need to have valid and trustworthy data. If you don't have that, then the results are not credible, and it's difficult for policymakers to sort of follow the policy recommendations. But we also use some long-term data, which is not available in Pakistan right now. So we use different projections. We had a huge discussion on the future GDP growth for Pakistan. Very uncertain. Ministry of Finance was giving one number, and other ministries were giving other numbers. But we did use some numbers coming in from NTDC and factored in the GDP growth up to 2050. And of course, when the GDP grows, then the electricity consumption follows, because there's no decoupling in Pakistan right now. So we actually put in some of these energy demand growth scenarios, We also used for some fuel price assumptions from especially the International Energy Agency, who has developed net zero scenarios for 2050. So we use those data from the energy outlook reports coming from IEA. We had different fuel price assumptions for instance, the traditional fuels, but also uranium, which is used in Pakistan, of course, but also bagasse. So we put in those assumptions to have some kind of picture on the fuel prices. Very important to have that and also discuss it thoroughly before you put it into the models. And then we also, of course, looked at technologies. I mean, which technologies would be relevant for a country like Pakistan, and what were the related prices? And of course, I think it's a no-brainer to say that PV, solar energy, and wind, I mean, from a least cost perspective, they are very cheap compared to fossil fuels. And this is, I think, documented and recognized by most countries, including here in Pakistan. So PV and wind, of course, is really important. Then we looked at, I mean, what are the possibilities of getting a net zero development for Pakistan in terms of CO2 emissions. And we just assume that it would be a linear sort of reduction up to 2050. But then we had to stop our models because we realized that the technologies available after 2045, they are not readily available right now. We need to consider the cost, for instance, for battery storage technologies, for other type of technologies, CCS, etc. So we actually stopped our models when we reached 2045 and said, well, we have to discuss further regarding the future technologies. I mean, Pakistan right now, people are discussing hydrogen production. They are discussing large batteries in the power system. And when we ask about the cost, they become a bit silent because it is quite expensive. So we did not continue our models beyond 2045. Then going to the capital restriction, we were told that we should not expect that we have more than around $6 billion annually for the next couple of years in the current economic environment. So we put that in. We don't know if it's high or low. I think you are the experts in this, but we put in that restriction to see what kind of future do we get. And then we define our scenarios. I won't go into a lot of details, but I think the most important and maybe surprising is actually the results. I mean, what did we learn by doing this? What does it mean for the Pakistani power system? And it's more like this. It's quite clear. I mean, we have a baseline, which is more or less, I would say, fossil. A lot of local coal is being utilized because it's too expensive to import coal from other countries. Like the ambassador mentioned, I mean, you are using a lot of foreign reserve on that. The government has decided it should stop, but if you can't replace it with renewable energy, then you only have the local coal available. So the baseline is quite black, I would say. A lot of CO2 emissions in that. Then looking at the net zero, when we put in all the assumptions and the models, there's a clear answer. I mean, wind is coming in. And remember, it's a least cost model. So it always chooses the cheapest technologies. So this is not this is a result coming from the model. So wind and solar, it's a no-brainer. It is the future. It's cheapest. So as long as you have the capital to invest, the capex, then the future can be green. I think the biggest technical barrier is actually the transmission grid, because the transmission grid is old, is outdated. It's difficult to integrate the renewable energy. But I think we'll come back to that. Then looking at the capital restricted scenario, I mean, what happens if we can't invest in renewables? Because it requires investment from local funds or international funds. Renewable energy requires investments. Then it's also a black future. It's also fossil fuels. It's our LNG, it's local coal. So it is to a very large extent fossil, and it's imported. So the capital restriction, of course, is creating a lot of barriers. And I think we'll come back to that. Why is that interesting? Also for the international community to understand. I mean, we need climate financing. We need a lot of it in order to have a green future. Then we looked at the net zero capital restricted scenario. So you have the capital restriction, and you also want to go net zero. It's possible, but then you will continue the load shedding up to 2045. And that, I would say, is not a sustainable future to continue the load shedding, because that's really not good for industry. It's not good for Pakistan. It's not good for the consumers. So that's really not an option, I would say. So I think the future in our view is, I mean, there's only one possible future if we want to do something about the climate agenda, and that's the green one. I mean, that's the high penetration of the renewables coming in. I mean, we don't want the fossil fuels because it's creating a lot of problems in terms of climate change. We don't want load shedding because we want to grow our economies and we want to make consumers more sort of, I mean, we want to improve their economy, right? So we also looked at, I mean, what would it mean in terms of the renewable energy share in Pakistan? And you can just have a look at the numbers. Of course, if we have a green scenario, the share of renewable energy will increase. But if you have the capital restriction, the government is not even able to meet their own policies. I mean, the policies right now says we want to have 30% renewable energy, not including the hydro in 2030. And we want to have 60% in 2030 if we include the hydro. That's not possible with the current economic situation, because there's not enough capex. So you are not able to invest in renewables. So the government's own policies are actually not possible if we don't do something about it. And this is, of course, also looking at the generation cost of the energy system in the future. I mean, when we compare, of course, the net zero scenario with both the baseline and the capital restricted scenarios, you can see it's much cheaper from an economic point of view. I mean, the total extra cost of net zero scenario compared to the baseline is only $3.3 billion. That's the sustainable one. But if you're going towards the fossil fuels, then it's $8.7 billion more expensive compared to the baseline. So if you had to choose, which scenario would you choose? I mean, it's a no-brainer. You would go for the cheapest one and the most sustainable one. So that's also one of the key results, I think, coming from the study. So looking at the cost, I mean, a capital restricted future is really expensive for Pakistan as a country, for the consumers, for the industries, for everybody. It's not a sustainable pathway. We should deviate from that and see if we can go more green. If you look at the CO2 emissions, you can see that, I mean, the baseline, the CO2 emissions are just increasing, so we will not meet the policy targets of the government of Pakistan. We can see if we have a capital restricted scenario, then the CO2 emissions will reduce a little. But the only viable scenario is the green one. And if we go for that, then we will actually be able to reduce our carbon emissions. So we only have 13 million tons in 2045. And of course, carbon markets, other tools can of course contribute to this development. It's much needed. And also international financing, of course, international technical advice is needed in order to achieve this reduction in the CO2 emissions. So I think I won't go through all the implications and all the conclusions, but just to say, I mean, Pakistan has actually signed the Paris Agreement. So there is a commitment. So you have to work on CO2 reductions. And you have to develop a long-term energy policy, a long-term vision, a long-term roadmap, because I think that is required by the investors. I mean, if the investors are going to invest in renewable energy in Pakistan, it requires a very long-term and stable framework, including a very robust energy plan, ambitious energy policies, Just to mention a few sort of things of your neighboring countries, China is going climate neutral in 2060. India is going climate neutral in 2070. So Pakistan has to think in long-term vision and then, of course, try to implement it. We published a report at the COP. You can download it using the QR code. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or write an email. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you so much, Nadeem Saab. And this is what the energy outlook looks like in Pakistan, and what is being projected. So thank you for sharing this technical insights to the energy outlook in Pakistan, and how and why the transition is crucial. So we are waiting for the minister. So she is as of now in the PM House and will be joining us shortly. So in the meanwhile, if there are any questions from the journalists, so for the panel, so please, yes, sir.
My name is Umar. I'm from Samarkand. Your Excellency, in your address, you just said that Pakistan is suffering from two crises. One is economic and other is climate change. And then you also pointed out that giving on everything, and some on the other hand, is security concern. And on that matter, why don't your country put up different sort of programs or some infrastructure things in Pakistan so the carbon emission can be controlled? And on the other hand, Pakistan is also running on obsolete production of energy. Why does Denmark come in Pakistan and invest in energy markets so Pakistan can go green and the future generations can save?
Yeah, we would love to do that, of course. If there is a conducive environment for investment, I have a big waiting room of Danish investors who would like to invest in green energy in Pakistan, of course.
So along with that, would Denmark like to change? Would like to invest in the society of Pakistan, like changing their lifestyle or something like that, or would send in some trainers or people who can tell Pakistan how they can move forward so we can get it off the fossil fuels?
Basically, this is what Denmark is doing as of now. Their current investment, and this entire delegation sitting here, they're here for the doing the scoping and need assessment what Pakistan requires at the moment. They have been meeting with the policymakers, with the ministers as well. So this is what Denmark is doing. They are looking forward to investing in projects that Pakistani community requires in order to combat climate change. I hope I am correct. And carbon markets is one of the such interventions that Denmark is doing. There's another project happening from UNEP Copenhagen, the Sparks project, that's also on carbon markets, and that's one of the crucial supports that Denmark is providing directly to the Ministry of Climate Change, and working. That's also one of the projects that focusing on building capacity. So there are different projects. Even in the energy sector as well, the technical capacity building projects are also there. Nadeem Saab, if you would also like to highlight anything in that perspective, please do.
So much for the question. I think what I just showed in the presentation is you have to have a long-term, stable vision and a roadmap, which is credible. And then I think the investors will come. I mean, that has been the case in Denmark for many years, to develop these realistic energy outlook reports, have policymakers supporting it, not only for 4 or 5 years, but actually do it for many years to create some stability for the investors. And I think that's really needed because I think one thing the investors really don't like is instability.
So, Gigi.
I have a question.
Pakistan ka status kya hai? What is the Pakistan status in carbon caps? Do we have any specific policy and laws and
Sure,
regulation?
sure. So for this question, we have presentations as well. So keeping in view the time frame, our excellency, he has to leave around like in next 5 minutes maybe. So just one last question, and then we have the technical presentations, and we can do the question answer session later on as well. Ji, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Rania Tamkin Zaidi from Park Mission Society, National NGO. Sir, I have a question. How is the biodiversity conservation considered within the carbon credit market? Kindly give some example of Denmark. Thank you.
The biodiversity, the
Conservation.
ecological conservation, if that's also something being considered as potential carbon markets, the biodiversity credits. And so if there's any example from Denmark.
I think the quick answer is no. But Denmark is generally not buying credits. And for compliance with our emissions reduction targets, as a part of the European emission trading system and the entire European strategy for reducing emissions, we decided after the Kyoto period, which ended in 2012, that we will achieve our emissions reduction goals in-house, at home, with our own investments domestically. So we are not using credits. Sweden has adopted an additional target of their own. They're actually buying credits, but it's one of the very few countries in the EU, in fact, the only one so far, that is buying credits to top up their already existing commitments in the EU ETS and the EU system. So they're adding that, but it doesn't count in their emissions accounting towards the EU goals. So therefore, we do not.
So thank you so much. So I would now like to request Dr. Khalid Waleed and the energy economist and research fellow at STPI, and Mr. Tahir Dinsar. He is one of the experts on journalism and also director SDTV at STPI. To please, if you can join us to distribute the shields to the delegation here from Denmark Embassy. And after the shields, we'll be moving on towards the technical capacity building workshop. And we have 1 or 2 presentations and some group work activity, followed by a certificate distribution ceremony. But the minister will be joining us. We are just waiting for her to wrap up the meeting at PM House. So she'll be here soon, and she has her remarks as well. So please, Tahir Saab and Dr. Khalid, if you can join us here. Thank you, everyone. So I request you all to, if you can please take your seats. We'll begin with the technical session now on how to actually report carbon markets, what are carbon markets, and why we require journalists and your support to create awareness and advocacy in the country. Why do we need carbon markets advocacy from the journalist community? So I request you all to take your seats. We can formally begin with the session, the technical session. I'm just again quickly giving a rundown. So basically, we have one or two presentations just to give an explainer on what carbon markets are. And then in the meanwhile, the minister gets here, we'll have her remarks as well. And then we will be engaging you. We'll try to engage you on what is your understanding after the presentations. How well have you understood carbon markets, and then how well are you in a position to start doing the reporting. So we have group work activity plan, and after the group work activity, we will have the certificate distribution to acknowledge your time that you have given us here, and to acknowledge your efforts that you will be putting in through the group work activity. So without further ado, I would now like to request Dr. Khalid Waleed, Research Fellow STPI, to give a brief presentation on what are carbon markets, policy, business, and necessity. So it's a brief technical presentation just to give an understanding on why carbon markets are important from the policy perspective, and what is the exact technicality involved in carbon markets. तो ये कोई hard and fast मुश्किल चीज नहीं है, ये बस थोड़ी सी अंडरस्टैंडिंग है इसके अराउंड. अगर आप लोग इस पे फोकस कर लें ग्रुप वर्क एक्टिविटी में, इट विल बी हेल्पफुल फॉर यू. वो मैंने थोड़ा सा टच किया.
Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining us on this very difficult sort of topic, but believe me, it is a very interesting one. So climate smart reporting, carbon markets, equitable development. This is where the story would start, I would say. These are some of the contents: climate smart reporting. Why do we need to incentivize this carbon management sort of system? Carbon markets 101. I would be very sort of would not use any jargons of climate change, so that it would be in simpler language for the masses to understand what is carbon markets through your able reporting and sort of insights. Then the modalities of carbon markets. On climate smart reporting, you guys are expert. But in terms of climate smart reporting, I think there are two paradigms. पहला जो है, that is climate injustice one, जो कि Karl Marx से start होता है, कि there is injustice in society and we need to sort of cater for that as well. और वो फिर debate आती है haves and haves not, debate आती है कि riches and poor, capitalist and labor. Climate change जो है, it would multiply this conflict sort of theory and climate injustice. To build your story, you need to start from Karl Marx conflict theory and highlight climate injustice. But as an actionable policy roadmap, we need to rely on this modern structural functionalism where carbon markets come in. You need to build economic engine. आपको एक economic engine build करना है, ताकि हम ये Karl Marx की जो conflict theory है और climate injustice जो है, इसको solve कर सकें, इसको justice की तरफ लेके जा सकें. So anywhere, anytime, अगर कहीं पे climate injustice है, so you need to build or link it with economic engine. अपनी economic growth को आगे जाके आएगा. ये environmental Kuznets curve कहते हैं इस चीज को हम लोग. On x-axis you have income levels, on y-axis you have environmental degradation. Relationship इनका non-linear है. At first stage, जैसे जैसे income बढ़ती है किसी भी मुल्क की, economic growth होती है, environmental degradation is bound to happen, और वो increasing rate पे होती है, increase होती है. This is your phase one. Growth is coupled with environmental degradation. फिर किसी एक point पे जब आपके पास sufficient level of income आ जाती है, you experience that tipping point. और अब जो है second stage में income भी बढ़ी है और environmental degradation is decreasing. This is the theoretical relationship between आपका income level, economic growth और environmental degradation. But जो modern चीज है, that is कि climate change adversities बढ़ती जा रही हैं. पाकिस्तान wait नहीं कर सकता कि we reach that tipping point and then we sort of design our system or we couple our economic growth with environmental improvement. हमें अभी से काम करना है. अभी पाकिस्तान की अगर सिचुएशन देखें तो कुछ ये है, ये जो आपको ग्रीन सर्कल नजर आ रहा है, सॉर्ट ऑफ दिस इनकम लेवल बड़ा कम है लेकिन इन्वायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन बड़ी हायर है. पाकिस्तान को करना क्या है? वी नीड टू बी देयर, इनकम लेवल भी ज्यादा और इन्वायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन भी कम. सो दिस इज व्हाट वी नीड टू प्लान. वी नीड टू कपल इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ विद इन्वायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन. इन्वायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन को भी कम करना, इनकम लेवल को भी बढ़ाना है हम. अब वापस आते हैं, व्हाट इज कार्बन मार्केट और मार्केट क्या होती है? अगर बड़े आसान लफ्जों में, मार्केट इज अ प्लेस वेयर इकोनॉमिक एजेंट कैन गैदर. इकोनॉमिक एजेंट्स क्या हैं? बायर्स, सेलर्स, इंटरमीडिएरीज. हमें जो आपका टेक्स्ट बुक इकोनॉमिक्स है, दैट टेल्स अस देयर शुड नॉट बी एनी एक्सटर्नैलिटी इन योर मार्केट. एक्सटर्नैलिटी क्या होता है? ये एक ना मार्केट मैकेनिज्म है वेयर डिमांड मीट सप्लाई, आपकी एफिशिएंट प्राइस जो है वो सेट हो जाती है एंड आपकी मार्केट्स जो है वो एफिशिएंटली वर्क करती है. लेकिन एनवायरनमेंट के केस में, कार्बन मार्केट के केस में थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट हो जाता है. यहाँ पे आपको लग रहा होगा कि मार्केट में जो प्राइस है दैट इज एफिशिएंट, बट जब आपकी इन्वायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन होती है उसमें होता यह है कि लेट्स से मैंने ये एक क्लिकर प्रोड्यूस करना है. अब इसकी जो कॉस्ट आ रही है वो मैं अगर मार्केट रेट पे इसको बेच दूं, दैट वुड बी एफिशिएंट मार्केट. अब मैंने सारी कॉस्ट इसके अंदर इनकॉर्पोरेट कर ली है एंड दैट कॉस्ट इज लेबर, कैपिटल, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. मेरा जितना काम लगा है, मेरा लेबर लगा है, एनर्जी लगी है, दैट इज कॉस्ट. लेकिन इन्वायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन में देयर इज अनदर कॉस्ट जो कि इन्वायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन में डैमेजेस की फॉर्म में आ रही है. जितने यूनिट्स मैं इसके बढ़ाता जा रहा हूँ, मैं इन्वायरमेंटल डैमेज भी क्रिएट करता जा रहा हूँ, जो कि एक कॉस्ट है लेकिन मैंने इनकॉर्पोरेट नहीं की. आई डिडंट थॉट ऑफ दैट जब भी मैं अपनी प्राइस कैलकुलेशन कर रहा था. कार्बन क्रेडिट्स या कार्बन प्राइसिंग क्या करती है? सिंपली आपके कॉस्ट कर्व को अपवर्ड शिफ्ट कर देती है. नाउ जब आप पहले एक लोअर कॉस्ट दे रहे थे, अब आपको एक हायर कॉस्ट देनी है. दिस इज द सिंपलेस्ट सॉर्ट ऑफ एक्सप्लेनर फॉर कार्बन मार्केट्स, कार्बन क्रेडिट्स. अब आपको ये जो डैमेजेस हैं इनको आपको मार्केट में कार्बन क्रेडिट्स की फॉर्म में एक दूसरे से परचेज करना है, ट्रेड करना है. दैट इज कार्बन मार्केट इन प्योर इकोनॉमिक्स और मार्केट टर्म्स. नाउ व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन पाकिस्तान? अब इसके 2-3-4 तरीके हैं. डैमेजेस के आप या तो सब्सिडीज दे दें या इंडस्ट्रीज को टैक्स कर दें. You cannot tax the industry in Pakistan because industrial growth is still hampering. आप जो है वो फास्ट रनर्स को स्लो कर देंगे. सब्सिडीज आप दे नहीं सकते because we are still under IMF funds program. Subsidy cannot be allowed. So one simple, one very exclusive sort of option that left behind is carbon markets. You need to offset your carbon emissions and that is the only viable option for Pakistan. Pakistan starts this carbon market credit and offset sort of thing. Carbon markets करती क्या है? The role of carbon markets, it provides flexibility for countries, hard to abate sectors, and then there is stick versus carrot approach, where you cannot use carbon taxation, you can use carbon markets. It provides you capital mobility, it provides you economic value and incentivization, and it sort of gives you to cater for spillover benefits, that is biodiversity recovery, यहाँ से क्वेश्चन भी आया था, and indigenous communities as well. काफी बात हो गई सीबैम पे. थोड़ा सा सीबैम को डिटेल में एक्सप्लेन कर देता हूँ. व्हाट इज सीबैम? सीबैम जो है ये कार्बन लीकेज को काउंटर करने के लिए यूरोपियन यूनियन का मैकेनिज्म है. एंड व्हाट इज कार्बन लीकेज? यूरोपियन यूनियन ने they establish a carbon tax on their industries, which means कि वहाँ पे जो industrial production है that would be higher compared to anywhere else in the world. अगर वहाँ पे इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोडक्शन हायर है, कॉस्ट हायर है, तो काफ़ी सारी यूरोपियन कंट्रीज ने, यूरोपियन कंपनीज ने सॉरी, दे ऑप्टेड टू अबेंडन यूरोप और कहीं और जाके मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंस्टॉल कर ली. फॉर एग्जांपल वहाँ पे, यहाँ पे कार्बन टैक्स नहीं था. दिस इज कार्बन लीकेज. इसको काउंटर करने के लिए now they have come up with an initiative that is carbon border adjustment mechanism. अब जितनी भी imports हैं by EU और exports by other countries, they are bound for carbon accounting. वो जैसे ही यूरोपियन यूनियन के बॉर्डर से आगे आएंगी, they would be sort of they would be assessing their carbon content at each level of their supply chain. कौन से सेक्टर्स हैं? सीमेंट, आयरन एंड स्टील, एल्यूमिनियम, फर्टिलाइजर्स, हाइड्रोजन, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. राइट नाउ पाकिस्तान की अबाउट 1.27% ऑफ टोटल एक्सपोर्ट इज सब्जेक्ट टू CBAM अभी currently. But when it would be expanded to all the sectors by 2030, टेक्सटाइल भी आ जाएगा इसके अंदर, और उससे पाकिस्तान की जो ये टैक्स का रेशियो है that would increase, that would hurt Pakistan's export competitive. ये टाइमलाइन है CBAM की. What is the timeline? 31st of October 2023 first reporting day, 31st 2024 transition time है. By 2026 इसका full roll out हो जाएगा for all the 6 sectors, and then expansion हो जाएगी इसकी to all the sectors, all the imported items by 2030. फिर पाकिस्तान की जो टेक्सटाइल, पाकिस्तान का जो राइस एक्सपोर्ट होता है to EU, that would come under the CBAM as well. This is sectoral comparison of carbon intensity compared with EU. अगर आप ग्राफ्स को देखें, for aluminium production, पाकिस्तान का carbon intensity for aluminium production is 5.7 times higher than EU, which means 5.7 times आपको cost भी pay करनी पड़ेगी in terms of CBAM certificates. अगर आप इसको cement और iron and steel में देखें, you'll see cement is 1.4 times higher as compared to EU. For iron and steel, it is 4.6 times more carbon intensive in Pakistan than EU. For electricity, 1.4 times carbon intensive than EU, and for fertilizers it is 2.3 times more carbon intensive as compared to EU. So अगर इन्हीं 6 sectors को देख लें, तो अगर पाकिस्तानी exports EU में जाती हैं, we need to buy CBAM certificates, or we need to pay the emission fee for Pakistan, जो कि हमारी export competitiveness को hurt कर रहा होगा. सिर्फ इस समझने के लिए, let's say पाकिस्तान सीमेंट अभी भी पाकिस्तान जो है एक्सपोर्ट करता है. लेट्स से पाकिस्तान का जो सीमेंट का कंटेंट है, इट्स 2 times हायर एज कंपेयर टू इंडिया और बांग्लादेश. इंडिया और बांग्लादेश को एक्सपोर्ट कंपेटिटिवनेस में दे वुड हैव एज, बिकॉज उनको कम रेट पे CBAM सर्टिफिकेट और कम CBAM सर्टिफिकेट खरीदने होंगे. दैट वुड मेक देयर एक्सपोर्ट्स टू EU मच less costlier than Pakistan's exports. That would hurt our exports and export competitiveness. So we need to think for that as well. In terms of electricity, Pakistan ka jo grid hai, that is 1.4 times more dirty or more have more carbon content as compared to EU. Ye kyun important hai? It is important because there are emissions known as scope 2 emissions. Salia would be elaborating it further. Scope 2 emissions हैं कि कोई भी इंडस्ट्री है, अगर वो डायरेक्टली लेट्स से वो कोयला जलाते नहीं है, लेकिन दे परचेज इलेक्ट्रिसिटी फ्रॉम द ग्रिड्स, फिर भी उनकी कार्बन अकाउंटिंग में दैट कार्बन वुड अकाउंट एज देयर कार्बन कंटेंट. तो अगर पाकिस्तान में इट इज 1.4 टाइम्स मोर कार्बन इंटेंसिव देन EU, देन अगर कोई भी इंडस्ट्री इलेक्ट्रिसिटी ग्रिड से खरीद रही है, तो दैट वुड पोज प्रॉब्लम्स फॉर पाकिस्तान. सो वी नीड टू क्लीन और नेशनल ग्रिड एज वेल, जिस पे डॉक्टर नदीम जो है वो प्रेजेंटेशन और लॉन्ग टर्म सिनेरियोज जो है वो बता रहे. What is the way forward? Integrate sustainable energy and environment into macroeconomic policies. IMF भी अब ये कहना शुरू हो गया है. स्प्रिंग मीटिंग्स में वर्ल्ड बैंक एंड IMF का जो था वो डेवलपमेंट प्लस क्लाइमेट था. इट इज नॉट separate anymore. Develop industry for environmental sustainability. Develop market for sustainability initiatives such as circular economy. Zainab is sitting with us. Carbon markets. Foster foreign direct investment into carbon markets. And then lastly, inter-industry carbon trading, regional and international carbon trading. So this is the way forward for Pakistan. What is a carbon credit? एक carbon credit होता क्या है? if you remove about 1000 kgs of CO2 or equivalent gases, और 1 ton CO2 अगर आप environment से atmosphere से remove करते हैं, this is 1 carbon credit. Or according to NASA, in 3 months time, a regular car produces about 1000 kgs of emission or 1 carbon credit. दो तरह के कार्बन क्रेडिट्स हो सकते हैं, रिडक्शन क्रेडिट्स एंड रिमूवल क्रेडिट्स. रिडक्शन क्रेडिट्स मीन आप रिड्यूस कर रहे हैं अपना कार्बन इंटेंसिटी, और रिमूवल मीन यू आर रिमूविंग इट फ्रॉम एटमॉस्फेयर. रिमूवल क्रेडिट्स आर bit more pricier than the reduction credits. This is the manifestation of 1 carbon credit. About 2-story building house के बराबर आपका एक 1 carbon credit होता है, 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide, which 1 car produces in about 3 months. और जो एवरेज प्राइस चल रही है एट आपकी जो कार्बन क्रेडिट्स की एट वॉलंटरी मार्केट, इट इज़ अबाउट 10 to 20 euros dollars per ton per carbon credit, और compliance market में it is about 50 to 100, between 50 to 100 USD per carbon credit. Pakistan still selling trading its carbon credits and voluntary market, not in the compliance market, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान में there is no compliance market as of yet. Voluntary carbon markets है, compliance carbon market है. Voluntary carbon markets means कि there is no compulsion, government involved नहीं है, industry can trade by themselves. कोई rules and regulations, bounding rules and regulations नहीं है. For compliance purposes, you are compliant, आप bound हैं कि you need to you have a cap and trade system. अगर इस level से ज़्यादा आपने emissions produce करने हैं, you need to buy some sort of carbon credits, and then that would be traded in compliance market. This is the potential. If you see this orange dotted line, this is business as usual. इतनी आपकी carbon dioxide GHG emissions होंगी, आप कुछ भी ना करो. But if you want to achieve your net zero by 2050, आपको ये bars को follow करना है, blue bars को. और ये जो difference नजर आ रहा है आपको, this is the potential for carbon credits. अगर carbon credits establish हो जाते हैं, तो we can cater for this difference between orange line and this blue bars. होते क्या है कार्बन क्रेडिट्स में, कार्बन मार्केट्स में? देयर आर 4 एजेंट्स, जैसे किसी एक ट्रेडिशनल मार्केट में होते हैं. प्रोजेक्ट्स, प्रोजेक्ट डेवलपर्स, देयर आर सम स्टैंडर्ड्स, रेगुलेटर्स, रजिस्ट्रीज, जिनके थ्रू प्रोजेक्ट डेवलपर्स को अपने प्रोजेक्ट्स को रजिस्टर करवाना होता है डिफरेंट स्टैंडर्ड्स को फॉलो करते हुए. जितना अच्छा स्टैंडर्ड होगा, जितनी ज़्यादा अच्छी कंप्लाइंस के साथ वो स्टैंडर्ड इंटेग्रिटी के साथ आप अपने कार्बन प्रोजेक्ट्स को रजिस्टर कराएंगे, दे वुड बी प्राइसियर इन दैट कॉन्टेक्स्ट. देन देयर आर बायर्स इंडस्ट्री हो सकती है, गवर्नमेंट्स हो सकती हैं, इंस्टीट्यूशंस हो सकते हैं. जस्ट टू गिव यू एन एग्जांपल, पाकिस्तान के जो डेल्टा ब्लू कार्बन्स थे, उसमें जो मेजर बायर है दैट इज द यूनाइटेड एयर फ्रॉम यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स. Again, Switzerland is buying carbon credits from Ghana and African nations. So buyers may either they can be governments, they can be industries, or they can be individuals. Then there are carbon exchanges, brokers and traders. जिस तरह से stock exchange में stocks exchange होते हैं, इसी तरह से अब carbon credits भी exchange होते हैं. Just to give you an example, पाकिस्तान का जो delta blue carbon है, it is listed in Singapore Carbon Exchange. वहाँ पे इसकी trading जो है वो हो रही है. Okay, these were the agents. This is the operational map. आप project develop करते हैं, documentation है, then there is you need to register your carbon project, monitoring and evaluation होती है, and then the carbon registry register your carbon project, and then you can trade it in the market. What are different challenges? Pakistan में first of all policy अभी बन रही है, we are not really sure about it. Federation versus provincial government के ownership किसकी होगी? Just to give you an example, forest departments are under provincial jurisdiction, जहाँ पे आपके nature based carbon credits बन सकते हैं, but carbon credits as of now is under federation's jurisdiction. So this is one of the major problem. In terms of project developers, supply issues आ सकते हैं, cost, quality, demand, addition, property, originality, Regulators में we need to sort of look for integrity assessment, confidence and regulations. In terms of carbon exchange, Pakistan में नहीं है, India is developing one, Central Asian republics, they are developing ones. और what are different principles? अब यहाँ पे एक थोड़ा सा मसला है, we need to follow these principles. एक तो ये कि they should be real, कोई green washing नहीं हो रही होनी चाहिए, actual reduction should be happening through carbon credits, measurable होने चाहिए, additional होने चाहिए, unique and traceable होने चाहिए, which means you can trace कि इस project से इतनी कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड जो है वो रिमूव हुई है फ्रॉम एटमॉस्फेयर. वैसे तो मैं भी कह सकता हूँ कि आई हैव पुट मैंने 500 दरख्त लगाए हैं और उन्होंने इतने टन कार्बन रिड्यूस किया है, बट ऐसा नहीं है. यू नीड टू मेक देम यूनिक एंड यू नीड टू मेक देम ट्रेसेबल एज वेल. वेरीफाइबल होने चाहिए कि कोई एक एजेंसी वेरीफाई कर रही हो कि वाकई रिडक्शंस हो रही हैं कि नहीं हो रही हैं. लीकेज ऑप्टिमैलिटी होनी चाहिए, परसिस्टेंस होने चाहिए. जितने ज़्यादा परसिस्टेंस होगी आपकी GHG रिमूवल, उतना ज़्यादा कॉस्टलियर और उतना ज़्यादा प्राइसियर आपका कार्बन क्रेडिट होगा. सालिया वुड बी एक्सप्लेनिंग इट इन डिटेल. क्लाइमेट इक्विटी होनी चाहिए, कॉस्ट, स्केलेबिलिटी एंड लास्टली जितना ज़्यादा इनोवेटिव सोल्यूशन होगा उतने ज़्यादा प्राइसियर होंगे आपके कार्बन क्रेडिट्स. पाकिस्तान में राइट नाउ नो रजिस्टर्ड प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं. मेजॉरिटी ऑफ देम कम्स फ्रॉम रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी विंड साइड, 6 हैं वो. वेस्ट कॉम्पोस्टिंग 1, नेचर बेस्ड सॉल्यूशंस बायोमास का 1 है. इन पाइपलाइन देयर आर 25, विंड के 14, सोलर के 6, नेचर बेस्ड सॉल्यूशन 1, वेस्ट लैंडफिल गैस 1, RE हाइड्रो 1 एंड हाउस होल्ड क्लीन वाटर 1. एंड एग्रीकल्चर में चूँकि राइस इज वेरी मीथेन इंटेंसिव सॉर्ट ऑफ एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्ट, सो वहाँ पे भी एक methane efficient rice sowing technique is registered for carbon credits. Lastly, एक inclusive development पे, for inclusive development you need to look for resources and demand, you need to look for financial mechanisms, you need to look for technology, you need to look for markets, and then you have this integrated carbon market. But इसका एक दूसरा पहलू है जिसको जहन में रखना बड़ा ज़रूरी है, particularly looking for climate injustice sort of perspective, और पाकिस्तान का जो injustice का perspective है उसको देखते हुए. And this is कि हमें पहले ये चीज़ acknowledge करनी है, remorse करना है कि there is climate injustice, global north की वजह से या पाकिस्तान के नॉर्थ की वजह से या सेंटर की वजह से पाकिस्तान का नॉर्थ और साउथ जो है वो सफ़र कर रहा है. And then we need to look for financial inclusion. रूरल एरियाज में भी वो इंक्लूसिव सॉर्ट ऑफ अवेयरनेस आनी चाहिए कि वो भी फाइनेंशियली इंटीग्रेट हो सकें कार्बन मार्केट्स में. टेक इंक्लूजन होनी चाहिए, जो भी स्टेट ऑफ द आर्ट सॉल्यूशंस हैं वो अक्रॉस द सोसाइटी सभी सेक्टर्स के पास जाने चाहिए. देन लोकल कम्युनिटी गवर्नेंस, दिस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज इफ़ यू टॉक अबाउट नेचर बेस्ड सॉल्यूशंस, मैंग्रोव्स की बात होती तो है. मैंग्रोव्स ने पाकिस्तान को अबाउट 40 मिलियन USD के कार्बन क्रेडिट्स जनरेट करके दिए हैं, बट स्टिल देयर आर कंसर्न्स फ्रॉम लोकल कम्युनिटी के पहले दोज वर द लोकल ओनरशिप, बट अब वो जो है ओनरशिप चेंज हो गई है बिकॉज ऑफ कार्बन मार्केट्स. सो वी नीड टू केटर फॉर दैट एज वेल. इन दोनों को इंटीग्रेट होना चाहिए, कार्बन मार्केट्स प्लस इक्विटेबल डेवलपमेंट. लॉन्ग टर्म प्लानिंग चाहिए, इंटीग्रेशन चाहिए, एम्पावरमेंट चाहिए. ये मेरे ख्याल से स्लाइड सालिया वुड एक्सप्लेन इट बेटर. थैंक यू सो मच.
थैंक यू. जी जी जी.
मेरा नाम अदील सईद है, मैं पेशावर से आया हूँ और इनफैक्ट मैं तो इनवाइटेड नहीं था इस पे, लेकिन ये मैं प्रेयर से इस चीज़ को समझना चाह रहा था, इसलिए मैं पेशावर से आया, इसलिए कि मैं इसको जो अवेयरनेस हो जाएगी. अभी भी बड़ा टेक्निकल ही है. एक जर्नलिस्ट होता है, एक स्टोरी अगर आप कह रहे हैं कि वो बनाए तो वो तो ह्यूमनाइज करता है, लोगों को कनेक्ट करता है, कम्युनिटी की जो है उसको बताता है क्या मुश्किलात हो रही हैं. फिर उसको जो है कार्बन मार्केट्स या कार्बन क्रेडिट्स या जो ये जो सारी जो आप बता रहे हैं इसको इसका कनेक्ट करना अभी तक हमारे जहन जो है इसको एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रहे, क्लियर नहीं हो रहे. और दूसरी ये कि हमने जो सुना था कि REDD के उसमें जो है कम्युनिटीज़ को जो है जैसे हमारे यहाँ KP में बिलियन ट्री सुनामी और जो इस प्रोजेक्ट शुरू हुए थे, तो कम्युनिटीज को जो है इसका बेनिफिट मिलेगा। तो अभी आप बता रहे हैं कि कम्युनिटीज को नहीं मिलेगा बल्कि फेडरेशन की तरफ जाएगा। तो
मैं कह रहा हूँ कि मिलना चाहिए कम्युनिटीज को।
अच्छा।
इसको इसकी जो फाइनेंसिंग है, रेवेन्यू जनरेट हो रहा है, इट इज़ अ टूल फॉर क्लाइमेट फाइनेंसिंग, अडेप्टेशन फाइनेंसिंग कह लें, मिटिगेशन कह लें, लेकिन वो कम्युनिटीज तक जाना चाहिए। और वो कम्युनिटीज जो इससे एडवर्सली इफेक्ट हो रही हैं ऑन अकाउंट ऑफ रिपोर्टिंग और सिंपलर टर्म्स में, वो मेरे ख्याल से सेशंस प्लान है, ज़ैनब वुड बी गोइंग यू गाइस थ्रू कि वो किस तरह से होता है।
जी, तो अभी उबैद की नीड असेसमेंट है जिसमें आप लोगों के हम ये क्वेश्चंस ले रहे होंगे। असल में हम चाह रहे हैं कि जो आप लोगों के सवालात हैं वो अगली कुछ प्रेजेंटेशंस में एड्रेस्ड हैं, और जर्नलिस्ट क्यों रिक्वायर्ड है रिपोर्टिंग के पर्सपेक्टिव में, और कैसे रिपोर्ट करना चाहिए उनको, ये हम अगली प्रेजेंटेशंस में एक्सप्लेन कर रहे होंगे। सो इन द मीनवाइल उबैद, आई विल रिक्वेस्ट यू फॉर द नीड असेसमेंट के ये ट्रेनिंग क्यों करवाई जा रही है और आप लोगों के क्या क्वेश्चंस हैं। सो कुछ उबैद भी आप लोगों से पूछ रहे होंगे और कुछ वो चीजें अगली प्रेजेंटेशंस में एड्रेस होंगी। ओवर टू यू उबैद।
जी, थैंक यू सो मच ज़ैनब जी, शुक्रिया सबका आने का भी। आई थिंक इट्स मतलब देयर इज नो लेक्चर, इट्स मोर ऑफ अ डिस्कशन आप सबके साथ ही है, बिकॉज मतलब आई नो फुली अंडरस्टैंड, डॉक्टर खालिद ने भी बहुत अच्छी प्रेजेंटेशन दी, बट आई फुली अंडरस्टैंड कि ग्राफ्स को इतना जल्दी कॉम्प्रिहेंड करना या पूरे कॉन्सेप्ट को कॉम्प्रिहेंड करना, इट्स डेफिनेटली नॉट एन ईजी, ना तो एक दिन का काम है। इट नीड्स अ लॉट ऑफ डिस्कशन, इट नीड्स अ लॉट ऑफ इवन द ग्राफ्स को इनको एक्सप्लेन करना, हाउ द सप्लाई डिमांड थिंग एवरीथिंग वर्क्स, एंड स्पेशली इस फील्ड के अंदर तो इट गेट्स more challenging. So what we actually मतलब जो चीज़ चाहिए हमें particularly for the journalist community and the reporting community, that needs something in very basic and layman terms, and how that can actually be explained very briefly and expeditedly in very simple language, जो कि not just for this community but perhaps और बिल्कुल minor level पे लोगों को भी समझ आ सके. So that's basically the thing. So इसके लिए I think just want to touch upon what the concept is, या हम exactly what we're actually trying to accomplish here is to sort of develop this very brief program, not particularly for the journalist community, आपके how very brief explainer series इनको किस तरह से develop करना चाहिए, या how they can actually be developed. तो I mean I think this roundtable is mainly to request from you कि what exactly are some of the very basic concepts, या ऐसे कौन सी terminologies हैं which the journalist community find very difficult to understanding, क्या मतलब definitely the supply demand curve, it's something do you need to understand, and how to what extent, या exactly कौन से concepts हैं which you think are very difficult and needs to be explained in a very brief language. So मतलब the idea is कि हम how we can actually tailor our program, हम उस program के अंदर कौन से concepts डालें, what sort of exercises या different training workshops should we do. So that's basically a concept. So we just have a couple of questions. I think एक मैंने already कह दिया कि आप लोगों को exactly कौन से concepts हैं जिनको brief करके समझाना है, या which tools you actually find very difficult to understand जिनको थोड़ा brief कर लें हम. जैसे कार्बन प्राइसिंग मैकेनिज्म्स की बात हुई, कार्बन क्रेडिट्स एग्जैक्टली ट्रेड कैसे होते हैं, व्हाट डिफरेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स इन पाकिस्तान आर डूइंग, एक रिपोजिटरी जब बनती है डिफरेंट क्रेडिट्स की तो हाउ एक रिपोजिटरी किस तरह से बनती है, या एंड द थर्ड वन इज अगेन व्हाट ट्रेनिंग और गाइडेंस डज द कम्युनिटी एज अ होल एक्चुअली नीड्स. So I think this is more and less, but this is sort of understanding हमारे लिए कि how should we tailor जब हम एक dedicated program में जाएंगे, because this was just more of an overview that this initiative is being started in the collaboration of SDP and the Embassy of Denmark. So perhaps anything जो कि हम एक program को बनाते हैं उससे पहले you would actually like to give an input जो कि उस program के अंदर लाजमी आ जाए. So perhaps this is where we can actually start. If anyone has, we can go one by one as well, but if anyone wants to jump in and go at the first, so please feel free. Yeah.
The carbon credits eco set program.
जी. Very well noted जी. I think एक दो हम ले लें, then we can collectively respond.
और इसमें पाकिस्तान के भी क्या, तो जैसे केपी ने अपना कार्बन स्टॉक लिया है, अभी आप बता रहे हैं कि मैंग्रोव्स पे जो है हम ऑलरेडी एग्रीमेंट भी हो गया है सेलिंग का, तो ओवरऑल पाकिस्तान की क्या पोजीशन है, कितना कार्बन हम हो रहा है, जनरेट हो रहा है, हम इसको कितना टैप कर सकते हैं, कितना इससे हम इस मार्केट में यूज कर सकते हैं. हाँ
बिल्कुल ठीक है. I think मैं I'll request Zainab to a bit reflect on this. But yes. Perfect. I think Zainab, if you can just start from exactly the carbon credit set them इनकी pricing set किस तरह से की जाती है, because this is actually one of the challenge अभी in fact जो ministry भी है वो guidelines बनाना चाह रही है because it's actually facing one of these challenges. Please Zainab.
So basically मैंने वो प्रेजेंटेशन जानबूझ के आज स्किप की क्योंकि हम इसको आप लोगों के लिए इजी रखना चाहते थे. आप में से कुछ लोग पिछली आप थे हमारी लास्ट ट्रेनिंग में, उस पर मैंने वो प्रेजेंट किया था. उस पे ग्लोबल स्टेटस कार्बन प्राइसिंग का ये कैसे सेट होती है, कार्बन ऑफसेट्स में क्या डिफरेंस है, कार्बन क्रेडिट्स में क्या है, क्योंकि इतने लिमिटेड टाइम में हम चाह रहे थे कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा बेसिक चीजें कवर कर लें. सो एक तो मैं उबैद से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी आफ्टर दिस ट्रेनिंग आप लोगों के कॉन्टैक्ट्स हमारे पास है, हम ईमेल पे आपके साथ वो टेक्निकल प्रेजेंटेशन भी शेयर कर देंगे जिसपे आप लोगों को बेसिक टर्मिनोलॉजी की अंडरस्टैंडिंग हो जाएगी कि कार्बन क्रेडिट क्या है और इसकी प्राइसिंग ग्लोबली क्या चल रही है. 2022 से पहले दुनिया में या इवन कोविड के दौरान भी कार्बन प्राइसिंग जो है वो बड़ी बूम कर रही थी, अच्छी चल रही थी. एग्जैक्ट मुझे वो फिगर याद नहीं है बट प्रेजेंटेशन में मैंने मेंशन किया हुआ है. तो ये ऐसे सेट होता है कि मुख्तलिफ जो गवर्नमेंट्स हैं आपकी वो डिसाइड कर रही होती हैं अपने अकॉर्डिंग. अभी जैसे डॉक्टर खालिद की प्रेजेंटेशन में एक चीज थी कंप्लायंस मार्केट की और एक चीज थी VCMs की, वॉलेंट्री. कंप्लाइंट मार्केट्स में काफी ममालिक हैं जो कि यूरोपियन यूनियन में जिन्होंने अपनी प्राइस सेट की हुई है कि इस प्राइस पे हम परचेज करेंगे. अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज से ज्यादातर ट्रेडिंग अभी अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज के साथ चल रही, इस प्राइस हम आपसे खरीदेंगे. और कुछ प्राइसेस है जो कि आपके सेलर्स ने भी सेट की हुई है. लेट्स से कुछ अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज के इतने अच्छे क्रेडिट्स हैं उन्होंने बता दी हमारी ये प्राइस है, उसकी बेसिस पे एक ग्लोबल ना वो स्टैंडर्ड सेट हो गया था कि इस प्राइस पे अभी ट्रेडिंग हो रही है. जैसे आपका स्टॉक एक्सचेंज होता है इस तरह पता लग रहा होता है किस उस पे वो चल रही. लेकिन अभी 2022 में प्राइस थोड़ी कम हो गई थी. एक तो मसला चल रहा था ये जो आर्टिकल 6 है ना आपका, आर्टिकल 6 पेरिस एग्रीमेंट का, उसमें कुछ चीजें हैं जो अनसेटल्ड हैं अभी तक. ठीक है, उस पे COP28 पे भी बात हुई, 27 पे भी बात हुई. अब हम एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हैं कि COP29 में वो चीजें सेटल हो जाएंगी. जब वो चीजें सेटल हो जाएंगी, जैसे हमारा आइन होता है, आइन में अगर कुछ चीजें डिफाइन ना हो पाए प्रॉपर तरीके से तो आगे हम लोग कैसे उस पे कानून साजी करेंगे. इसी तरह से आर्टिकल 6 में कुछ शिके हैं जो कि डिफाइन नहीं हो पा रही कि अगर लेट्स से 2-3 ममालिक एंगेज होते हैं कार्बन ट्रेडिंग में तो कौन सा उनको जो है उसकी जैसे अभी सोशल इक्विटी की बात हो रही थी कि उसकी वेरिफिकेशन के लिए, उसकी ट्रेसेबिलिटी के लिए, उसकी ट्रांसपेरेंसी के लिए कौन कौन सी स्टैंडर्ड्स लगाने जरूरी हैं. ठीक है, अब वैसे तो बहुत सारी ऐसी कंसल्टिंग फर्म्स हैं जिन्होंने कार्बन क्रेडिट्स इशू करने शुरू कर दिए. ठीक है, इंटरनेशनली कुछ स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं जो डिफाइंड है, जिनको रिकग्नाइज किया गया है. जैसे आपके वेरा के स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं, आपका गोल्ड स्टैंडर्ड है, आपके और कुछ अमेरिकन उसके स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं. लेकिन कुछ स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं जो डिफाइंड नहीं है, उन पे भी ट्रेडिंग हो रही है वॉलेंट्री कार्बन मार्केट्स में. डिफाइंड स्टैंडर्ड्स वहां है जहां पे कंप्लायंस में है, जो कि यूरोपियन ममालिक आपस में लगे हुए. अच्छा, ये हमारा स्टैंडर्ड है, इसके मुताबिक इतनी प्राइस पे आपने करना है. लेकिन वॉलेंट्री मार्केट्स में क्योंकि रेगुलेटेड नहीं है, उस पे किसी भी प्राइस पे चले जाओ, एक जनरल ट्रेंड बन जाता है. अच्छा, इस पे अफ्रीकन ममालिक पे इस प्राइस पर हो रही है तो अभी ये प्राइस चल रही है आपकी. हमारे रीजन में ये थोड़ा लीस्ट इंटीग्रेटेड रीजन है, अभी उस लेवल पे ट्रेडिंग स्टार्ट नहीं हुई, लेकिन हम भी इंगेज हो रहे हैं. अभी एशिया में थाईलैंड का सबसे बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट है, आप लोग सर्च कीजिएगा. थाईलैंड में जो व्हीकल्स हैं उन्होंने स्विट्जरलैंड के साथ कार्बन ट्रेडिंग शुरू की है इस पे, और उनके एकदम थाईलैंड में एक बूम आ गया है इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स में. उनकी बहुत बड़ी बड़ी इन्वेस्टमेंट आना शुरू हो गई क्योंकि स्विट्जरलैंड ने उनसे क्रेडिट्स खरीदना शुरू कर दी, उन्होंने क्रेडिट्स बेचे हैं. तो ये इस तरह के प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं जो छोटे छोटे शुरू हुए हैं और एकदम कंट्रीज में इन्वेस्टमेंट आना शुरू हो गई. अब प्राइस एकदम से थाईलैंड आया, अब कल को कोई और कंट्री आएगा तो प्राइस उसके अकॉर्डिंग वेरी करना शुरू कर देगी. तो अभी जरूरी ये है कि हर मुल्क अपनी प्राइस, हम इस स्टेज पर पहुंचे कि हम अपनी प्राइस बता सके. जो सोरेन अभी बात कर रहे थे कि आप खुद बताएं कि ये हमारा क्रेडिट है, इतनी रिडक्शन हमने की है और इतनी प्राइस पे हम बेचेंगे. ठीक है, उस पे आपको लेवरेज होगा, उस पे एक ऑथेंटिसिटी, एक वो कहते हैं ना एक अच्छा स्टैंडर्ड इस्टेब्लिश हो जाएगा जो आपका कंट्री को भी बूम करेगा. तो अभी ये एक जनरल ट्रेंड चल रहा है और प्राइस अभी थोड़ी बीच में डाउन हुई थी, लेकिन अब हम एक्सपेक्टेड है कि ये 2024 के मिड ऑफ 2024 के बाद एकदम फिर से बूम आ जाएगा. CBAM की वजह से भी प्राइस थोड़ी रिड्यूस हुई थी. ये जो टैक्स टैक्स आ रहा है। अब जर्नलिस्ट कम्युनिटी के लिए जरूरी ये है कि वो इस चीज को देखे कि सीबैम आ गया, हमारी कितनी इंडस्ट्री है जो यूरोप के साथ ट्रेड कर रही है, ठीक है, तिजारत हो रही है हमारी। अब अगर यूरोपियन कंट्री ने कह दिया भाई अपनी एमिशन रिडक्शन रिपोर्ट लेके आओ, कितने रिड्यूस किए है, कितने क्रेडिट बेचे हैं, अगर आप लोग क्रेडिट बेच रहे होगे तो आप लोग बता सकते हो कि भाई हमने इतने क्रेडिट बेचे हैं और हम इस लेवल पे खड़े हैं, तो टैक्स हमारा रिड्यूस करें, ठीक है, रिड्यूस हो जाए। लेकिन जो बेचारे एंगेज ही नहीं हुए, वो तो एक टैक्स आपके मुल्क ने नहीं लगाया, लेकिन जहां पे ट्रेड करनी है उन्होंने लगा दिए, तो आपको जो डॉलर्स में टैक्स देना पड़ जाएगा, किधर जाएगी इंडस्ट्री। इस पर्सपेक्टिव में जर्नलिस्ट को इस वक्त बहुत ज्यादा अवेयरनेस क्रिएट करनी। तो ये आपके दो क्वेश्चंस मैंने आंसर करी। सॉरी फॉर टेकिंग अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम उबैद, प्लीज।
अब ये आंसर कि कितने कार्बन क्रेडिट्स अभी तक पाकिस्तान जनरेट कर चुका है बहुत सिंपल होता कि अगर ऑलरेडी एक रिपोजिटरी कंट्री की बन चुकी होती। द वर्ल्ड बैंक इज वर्किंग ऑन इट, पाकिस्तान इन कोलैबोरेशन विद वर्ल्ड बैंक इस पे काम कर रहा है, बट इट्स होपिंग टू हैव दिस डेटाबेस सून। इसमें द फर्स्ट थिंग स्टार्टेड जो कि आई थिंक सोरेन ने भी बात की, सबसे पहले क्लीन डेवलपमेंट मैकेनिज्म आया था पहले, जिसके अंदर हमारे सीमेंट के कुछ पावर प्लांट्स ने भी इस कार्बन क्रेडिट्स को टैप करने की कोशिश की। आई थिंक ऑलमोस्ट कोई 42 के अराउंड उस टाइम पे भी प्रोजेक्ट्स अप्रूव हुए थे जिन्होंने क्लीन डेवलपमेंट मैकेनिज्म के थ्रू इन कार्बन क्रेडिट्स को जनरेट करना था। एक बहुत बड़ा जो प्रोजेक्ट है हमारा डेल्टा ब्लू कार्बन के नाम से, आपको सबको मतलब उस चीज़ का पता होगा, उसके अंदर भी जो एक्सपेक्टेड एक अमाउंट जो जनरेट हुई है रफली समवेयर अराउंड 12 टू अब 13 मिलियन जो कि उस दिन फॉरेस्टेशन डिपार्टमेंट ने जनरेट की। इट्स वर्थ अलॉट मोर, बट डेफिनेटली वो एक चीज़ें अभी इन प्रोसेस चल रही हैं। सो जो टर्म है कि कितने हम जनरेट कर चुके हैं, देयर इज नो स्पेसिफिक और राइट आंसर एज ऑफ येट अनटिल एंड अनलेस हमारे पास एक ऑफिशियल रिपोजिटरी बन के सामने नहीं आ जाती। बट स्टिल वी डू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ डिटेल्स। आई थिंक डॉक्टर खालिद ने भी अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन के अंदर काफ़ी चीज़ें दिखाई थी, तो उन चीज़ों को भी। बट आई थिंक एज ऑफ नाउ जस्ट गोइंग वन स्टेप, एक स्टेप दोबारा पीछे के अपार्ट फ्रॉम दीज क्वेश्चंस, आई थिंक इस टाइम पे जो चीज़ हम ज़्यादा समझना चाह रहे हैं दैट इज बेसिकली कि इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट को या इस सब्जेक्ट को, बिकॉज कार्बन ट्रेडिंग कार्बन मार्केट्स इज अ ब्रॉड सब्जेक्ट, एग्जैक्टली व्हाट सपोर्ट कैन एसडीपीआई प्रोवाइड, मतलब किस टाइप की कोई इनिशिएटिव्स लेकर, या हाउ वी कैन एक्चुअली असिस्ट यू इन understanding the whole theme. So perhaps iske upar if anyone has any suggestions, any dedicated programs, any dedicated one-on-one meetings या suggestions या कोई sort of anything इसके around, if you have any suggestions so please. नहीं, I think if we actually look forward to listening from you firstly कि आप लोगों की exactly suggestions हैं क्या।
वो सब्जेक्ट है जर्नलिस्ट के लिए, वैसे क्लाइमेट चेंज और एनवायरनमेंट मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया का एक सब्जेक्ट अभी नहीं है।
स्टोरी बना रहे हैं तो आपको फोकल पर्सन हो बैठ करा सके या उसको पूछ सके, तो तभी हमने सुन लिया 2 दिन बाद में कहते हैं सर हम बोलेंगे ये अगली प्रेजेंटेशन में ना कि मैं आपको बताती हूं ये कैसे करेंगे, हम मतलब आपको कुछ हेल्प दे सके कि हम उसमें जो है हम आपको मतलब बदल करेंगे, आपको कांटेक्ट करेंगे, मैसेज करेंगे, कोई हमें रिप्लाई कर थोड़ा गाइड करें। आपके लिए बैठे हैं अभी बैठे हैं ना जी, बाद में जब हम
नहीं हम इस इनिशिएटिव इसीलिए ले रहे हैं जस्ट टू हैव अ बेटर कोलैबोरेशन। जी जी, तो इंशाल्लाह वी विल डू देखिए हम लोग ये भी कर रहे होंगे
what we are going to do with all of this is training के बाद हम एक सॉर्ट ऑफ ब्रॉडकास्ट लिस्ट या एक कम्युनिटी भी बना लेंगे कार्बन मार्केट्स के अराउंड, ठीक है। डॉक्टर खालिद, उबैद, सालिया, मैं, हम लोग आप सबके हवाले से जो भी स्टोरी आपने बनानी है उसमें जो भी फैक्ट चेक चाहिए आप उसमें हमारे से डायरेक्टली पूछ सकते हैं। हम चाह रहे हैं कि जितना, जैसे वो कहते हैं ना कतरे कतरे से दरिया बनता है, आपको आज पता लगे आप अपने जाके मजीद स्प्रेड करें इसको, मैसेज को। मजीद जर्नलिस्ट कुछ ने ज्वाइन किया, कुछ नहीं आ सके, कुछ ऑनलाइन है हमारे साथ इस वक्त, तो जितना ज्यादा इसकी कवरेज हो, ये हमारा पर्पज। और एक्सप्लेनर सीरीज हम स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं जिसपे हम लोग सोशल मीडिया पे ये मैसेजिंग के थ्रू एक्सप्लेन कर रहे होंगे लोकल लैंग्वेजेस में भी कि कार्बन मार्केट्स क्या है। तो सिर्फ अंग्रेजी में नहीं, ये उर्दू में भी हमारी पूरी कोशिश होगी इसको करें ताकि वो मजीद अच्छे तरीके से कम्युनिकेट हो सके।
सिंध ने जो है अपना मैंग्रोव कार्बन जो एग्रीमेंट भी कर दिया, केपी ने भी जो है केपी ने भी स्टॉक लिया हुआ है काफी अच्छे से, कई साल हो गए इस बात को, लेकिन वो नहीं सेल कर सकता। अगर हम उसको मतलब वो करें कि आप इसको इनिशिएट करें सिंध में बेच तो आपको ज़्यादा मेरा स्टॉक होगा केपी के पास और वो उसको बेचे उसकी क्या हर्डल है क्यों नहीं बेच सका मार्केट में क्यों नहीं जा सका केपी की जी हाँ क्यों सेल हो गए और केपी का जो है
क्यों नहीं हो सके? बिल्कुल, आपको याद होगा हमारा एक रेड प्लस का बहुत बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट चला था। केपी ने सबसे ज्यादा फायदा केपी को मिला था उसमें, फॉरेस्टेशन, इवन बिलियन ट्री सुनामी है, जो भी हमारे फॉरेस्ट्री रिलेटेड प्रोजेक्ट्स है, केपी वाज वन ऑफ द प्रोविंस जिसको ज्यादा बेनिफिट मिल सकता था। इशू ये हुआ कि बिकॉज ऑफ द लैक ऑफ पॉलिसीज, मुल्क में पॉलिसीज नहीं बनी हुई थी, गाइडलाइंस नहीं थी कार्बन क्रेडिट्स के अराउंड, जिसकी वजह से हम रेड प्लस का सेकंड फेज भी नहीं ले सके थे। टेक्निकल कैपेसिटी उस वक्त मिसिंग थी, लैक कर रही थी। बट नाउ अभी ये जो कार्बन मार्केट्स एंड सीबैम, इसका ये एक ट्रेंड स्टार्ट हुआ है यहाँ पे। अब जो क्रेडिट्स उस वक्त नहीं हो सके, अभी जो एक हम पॉलिसी एक एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हैं वेरी सून, द मिनिस्ट्री इज वर्किंग ऑन इट, सो we are expecting that once the policy guidelines are there by the ministry, maybe KP will start doing credits, you know. The time when billion tree tsunami was there, when red plus was there, guidelines were not there, so but now policy is going to be there, so maybe the credits that could not be dealt with at that time, maybe, you know, ab wo start ho jaye. So we do expect that. From your story, from journalistic point of view, you were asking us about the challenges and, you know, the opportunities around it. So now we expect from you, you do a story from KP for us, identify the challenges, identify the opportunities, you know, talk to the community, what is their thinking around it, talk to the experts there, what is their thinking around it, come up with a story, so at least we understand their perspective, and that's how we are able to better communicate it with the policymakers. You know, these are the needs and this is what community is expecting from you, so this is the kind of policy that you should be having, right? So that's why we need your support in this matter.
Yes, absolutely. Zainab, I think we can just go on to
Okay.
the next.
So we are left with a little time. We want to do the group work activity as well. So
I believe, Zainab, just in interest of time, we can perhaps have the same questions or exercise in the same hall.
in the same hall, exactly. So Saleha, you have like 5 to 6 minutes left for your presentation. I have to start the activity, so maybe briefly you can go over the presentation, and after that, no, not this presentation, Umair, dusri wali hai. And after that, we'll request you to for a group work activity. I'll explain it. We have little time left, so Saleh, maybe.
Yes, thank you very much, Zainab. Like most of the things have been discussed earlier about the trends, trends, not trends, because just because of the enabling parameters or standards. So this presentation is actually on what are the successful stories currently running around the globe, and what are the enabling parameters for your like for your education or for your awareness. Um, when we're talking about the private sector, it's a huge potential for the private sector, and it's been estimated that by 2030 the carbon credit markets will reach 50 billion US dollars, and this is because due to the will be facilitated through the policy support, the incentives from the investor, and it's also been talked about the COP28, that after COP28, its adoption for the climate-friendly practices has been enhanced to meet the global climate targets. These are some successful projects. On the left side, you can see Expansive, DevStream, and Global Carbon Credit. These are the organizations or the companies which actually develop projects, and then they can like they made a depository for you and then sell it to the facilitate you in the process of developing the project. On the right side, there are some successful stories of different countries like Indonesia, Peru, and they have like Indonesia have generated 5.4 million offsets for companies, and their project mainly focused on the carbon sequestration and biodiversity. And when we talk about the PIRO, they also supports biodiversity conservation, sustainable land use, and same with the Kariba forest. They also work on the preservation of the ecosystem and carbon sequestration. These are the successful studies from the India and the Asia Pulp plants, and also everyone talked about the Delta Blue Carbon wind power project in India. They have implemented and generating 280,000 carbon credits per year, and their credits were sold to the European companies. And they have gained the significant revenue, and that's in fact improved the employment and economic development of the country. And same with the Asia Pulp project, they have implemented the forestry practices, and they have generated the carbon credits and sold it to the European companies. And Delta Blue Carbon, it's in the same, which we talked about earlier, on the same in mangroves, and it's a high quality carbon, and they have sold it to the Climate Impact X Singapore Stock Exchange, as Dr. Khalid mentioned earlier. So what are the trends to watch for the carbon credits? Because it increases the revenue, as talked about earlier, growing coverage, market resilience, and technological innovation, biodiversity credits. So these are the trends which needs to be watched out for the enhancement of the carbon credits or carbon markets. Talking about the pricing mechanism, like which standard issue the credits, which I think one of the journalists asked. It's a Vera Gold Standard, Carbon Registry, Climate Action Reserve. They set the higher prices, and they are well-known carbon standard registries, and they establish the credits. Talking about the price methodology, for example, afforestation, clean cooking, biochar, these are widely accepted methodologies used for the carbon credits. Renewable energy carbon credits priced lowest because they are developed so much, they enhance so much, and the engineered, which in carbon credits are priced highest. Older projects are the ones which are not gained as much credit price, while the newer projects gain the higher price. So when we are talking about the country or region where the carbon markets efficiently work, global north and the countries from the stable government, their carbon credits work really efficient as compared to the unstable countries or unstable governments. Price of a carbon credit, generally there are very many co-benefits of the carbon credits. The higher the price, the higher the carbon credit means. So generally engineered carbon credits, as I talked about earlier, they have higher price than the renewable energy projects. And when we talk about the jurisdiction, so the stable economies have higher price, set higher prices for the carbon credits as compared to the unstable governments. Carbon removal projects usually command a price premium over the carbon avoidance projects, and other factors that are actually rating by the external rating agencies are it's for the journalists that negative news coverage for the specific project that also tend to depress the prices of the specific project. Poor rating likely have a similar effect through the carbon rating sector in a new and not yet widely consulted. Standards globally, which the recognized standards are Vera Gold Standard, Global Carbon Council. Vera is a Verified Carbon Standard program, is the world's most widely used greenhouse gas emission gas crediting program, and it is most widely accepted and used for the different crediting programs. It drives financing towards the activities that removes and emissions and improve livelihoods and protect the nature. VCS projects have reduced or removed more than 1 billion tons of carbon credits so far, and it's a critical evolving component, ongoing effort to protect our shared environment. These are scientifically rigor, transparent, and they think about more innovative thinking. So these are the some of the projects which Vera has been conducted so far: blue carbon, carbon capture and storage, agriculture, forestry, and other land use, and energy transition. To expand the portfolio of how the Vera methodology is using, the experts are working on that. They are engaging the stakeholders on developing that, how we can actually go for the other new methodologies to continue the advancement in the improved important technologies. So now the focus areas of adding new methodologies is on the carbon capture, utilization and storage, carbon dioxide removal technologies, early retirement of coal-fired power plants, grid energy storage optimization, hydrogen as a fuel, enhanced weathering, and cement industry decarbonization. So what's the perspective or thinking on the carbon credits is that they are cheap and easy to earn money. The dangerous ways that we are not incorporating the equality in the carbon trading, and the right ways that there is actually an economic case, especially when we're talking about the developing economies, and the good ways, equitable and integrational investment in carbon credits. After COP28, as Zainab talked, that it's a regulated compliance market and less regulated voluntary market. So enabling parameters is policy interventions of decarbonization, green initiatives, market standardization, and these all are the parameters which I'm talking about with relevance to the Pakistan perspective, that these are the enabling parameters that should be incorporated when the policy is coming, and there would be a much enhanced carbon market in Pakistan. So government guarantees and collaboration and international finance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Umair, can you please display my slides so we can start with the group work? So basically, because we are short of time, so we'll be doing this activity here. My presentation, please. So for the journalists, I think first of all, for starting a story, we need to understand whether it's carbon markets or climate action as a whole. It must integrate the angle of, humanize, connecting with the communities, people centric. So it has to be first thing should be that you should keep in mind that keeping your stories, more people relevant. So next slide. Okay, mere paas hai ye. Thank you. So some general tips. These are just 2 slides. How you communicate defines how well you report. So basically, we do know that climate change, there are certain facts and figures and data about, what is happening, how climate is damaging, what is the loss and damage, how much finance is required. That's right. But too much facts and figures can be boring for the general community. Sometimes they're not looking for those facts and figures. Sometimes they're actually looking for the message that needs to be communicated more than the facts and figures that are being communicated. So it should not always be the facts and figures. It should sometimes come, be some story coming up with connecting with your local community, how certain communities getting affected from heat stress, maybe how they have to reach out to, the women have to reach out to fetch the water from the well because there is no water access. And even otherwise, Pakistan is getting water, stress country, from being water surplus to being water stressed in next 2 to 3 years. So this is the stats, but then connecting with your local communities, connecting with the local women who have suffered, in scorching heat that they have to go to fetch water. So, storytelling should be there. Then sharing stories of positive climate action. It is not always about doom and gloom. We know we are in a state of climate emergency. We understand, but sometimes your general audience are not always in a mood of listening doom and gloom. Okay, this is floods. Yes, we have this disaster here. And why are we reporting every time? Climate reporting is, it gets the hype only when we have disasters. Why not proactively, like this is the time. We know we are already facing floods, and we know we are already facing climate change. April was never this cold in Islamabad. The evenings were never this cold like we are facing now. We did not have snowfall in the hills, these Margala hills, in April. So, but we are having this snowfall. So expect the temperature soaring in next few months, and then also expect torrential rainfall, because that is one of the climate impact of the climate change crisis. So why not start reporting now? Now is the time. Now is the time to act. We must not be waiting for disasters to start reporting on climate change. Yes, I do understand for media houses, rating TRPs, they matter. But again, this is something, climate change is all about your livelihood now. Climate change is the economic crisis. Climate change is the new normal. So start, reporting that thing as the state of emergency. Only then you will, even that during, if you have any disaster, you will have the kind of response that you expect, not just from your international community but also from your local community, to support the disaster hit areas. Okay, then carbon market is interconnected with sub themes of climate, so reporting different sub themes rather than a broad theme is more productive, right? It's not important that you start reporting carbon markets for Delta Blue Carbon project only. There is agriculture community. So there, and as you also mentioned, sir, that we have forestation and KP, and they wanted to sell credits, but they couldn't. So why not come up with that story? People are interested to listen to those stories. It's not that people are no longer interested. We have CBAM coming up, so industry is willing to listen. Industry is willing to get the understanding. So please report those stories. Agriculture, forestry, textile sector, your food and packaging, cement industry, steel industry, start reporting. Then simplify the context. Not everything has to be jargon related. Make it simple for the communities, make it simple for people to understand. Tell them there's an international tax coming up, so it's not coming up, it's eventually, it's just there. So why not start moving towards reducing your emissions? If you are somebody who's emitting more carbon emissions, you are going to face that tax. Even if your government is not imposing tax, but you are a trader, so you will have to sell your products at a more expensive rate, right? So you are going to face the brunt. So why not just control the emissions through different strategies? Then connect with human health, wealth is economy. So being an environmentalist, I just don't like saying this, but I have to say it because this is what it is now. There is a business case involved with climate, right? So climate change is becoming a business case for your country, for everything. It is connected directly with business. Your economy is getting affected, and climate change is one of the factors that you cannot control, right? So why not start reporting this, that economy is getting affected from climate change impacts. So this is what needs to be done. We need to prioritize climate in every policy. I know the trends have shifted. We have seen even before elections, different political parties coming up with climate change as part of their manifestos, political manifestos, right? This wasn't there a few years ago, but this is here now in Pakistan. Then link it to equity, equitable development, climate justice, community angle. It needs to be there. How a farmer is going to support his family, if he's connected with an industry that is going to suffer from CBAM. So if industry is suffering, that farmer is suffering. How you are going to support that farmer? Go to those people and ask them, do you know about this certain tax that is coming up? Explain it to them, and then ask them, how do you see the future in the country? They will tell you how do they see the future. They know, they understand, they have that basic understanding. These are some of the visuals. Visuals are very important in every storytelling, whether it's print media, whether it's social media, digital media, or it's electronic media. It's not always the graphs. You don't have to show the graphs. We have an illustrator sitting with us here, so thank you so much. I saw your illustration. It was very much I really liked it. So this is the kind of art that is needed to explain it to people. I saw this in one of the news, the digital news discredited the voluntary carbon market in India. Do people in climate benefit? Now just see the visual. there's a corporate entity sitting on top, and then how community is going to get the benefit from the carbon markets. So this is a visual that explains the equitable development, if it's there or not. Then there's this article from the Guardian, government under pressure to set up green levy on UK imports. You know, then overseas, I can't read it from here. Overseas figures, I think, sending firms, sorry. Yes, thank you, Ali. So I think these are some of the taglines and headlines, keep it in that tone, warning for the governments, warning for the industry, but for community as well, and also warning in the from the community's perspective. Your people are going to start protesting against you if there's this kind of tax around which there's no awareness. So why not come up with communication strategies and explain it to people? Then there was another article, The Great Cash for Carbon Hustle. Just see the taglines. These are more catchy taglines. These are for your corporate entities, but for communities angle, you have to come up with some other taglines. So this is more corporate centric, but eventually it has to be community centric reporting. But see the visuals. Even in this visual, there is environment aspect, trees are there, and then but just below that there's industry and very little environment aspect is there. So visuals are, they help you better communicate your story. Advocacy strategies: utilize social media for updates. Of course, social media is the new platform, and that is the first source of information now. And we do know the fact that through social media, sometimes you get wrong information, but mostly the information that is disseminated on social media is the first source of information that you get for all other media houses. Create informative videos, vlogs, simplifying carbon market concepts, featuring expert interviews and real-time examples. You have your phone, right? So this is your medium. Use it. If you don't have to be a very hi-fi somebody to do some specific programs with those hi-fi cameras. We do have people sitting here from different media houses. You can do it, but even for an individual level, use your phone. Get the experts on Zoom, do a live session on Instagram, maybe do a space on X when it's open. You can always have different strategies. Use those strategies. It's not difficult, it's not expensive. Use it. Then share stories from communities in Pakistan impacted by climate change to highlight the urgency for action, including the relevance of carbon markets and CBAM. There are floods, infrastructure is damaged, right? Communication breaks down. And Pakistan, we have seen that. We have been experiencing that, and we do experience it now, even when there's loss of infrastructure. So every fund is diverted to saving the communities. Economy suffers, right? Your industry suffers. Help them to think about that connection with the floods, with the heat waves, with the gloves, with the tornadoes, with the hurricanes, and every disaster that is climate induced. Help them connect, link it with those disasters, and then come up with a story, and then link it with CBAM, right? Industries, if they are not booming, your economies will suffer, your farmers will suffer. So first stakeholders in context of CBAM, it's going to be your industry in Pakistan. Investigate and spotlight how different industries in Pakistan have potential for carbon markets and how CBAM might affect them. Now, at this very time, you need to see which industries will be the first ones who will be affected from CBAM, right? And again, which industries are actually working in Pakistan towards this carbon markets. Identify. This is very basic mapping that can be done in collaboration with think tanks. Like you mentioned that, if we text you, so you are there to explain us. So yes, we are sitting here. We have the reports, published reports. We have the data. We are here to communicate it to you, and we request you to do the mass awareness, because that is what you can do. That is not something that we can do. Visualize carbon emissions data with infographics, charts. They are available over the internet. We can help you to verify the data, to verify the stats, and then collaborate. Media houses need to collaborate with the think tanks, with academia, with CSOs, and to share the viewpoints. Crowdsource information. I do see, before elections, these kind of events are very common. Journalists going to the community, asking them about their point of views. Why not do this for carbon markets, for climate change, for CBAM? ask the viewpoints. I know there will be question, that people are not aware. So why not create awareness first, do the talk shows, engage the policymakers. We engage the policymaker when we have to ask about IMF, when we have to ask about the debt, when we have to ask about the economy. Why not engage them for, what is your perspective on CBAM and carbon markets? Do it and then go for the crowdsourcing. Engage with policymakers and talk shows for generating debate on carbon markets, etc. Prime time talk shows need to prioritize climate change. Even now, it is not prioritized by prime time talk shows. There's a very little segment that's being done, and using this platform, this is my request to all of you to please do this, because this is happening, this is affecting our lifestyle. Everything is now linked with climate change. So if this is not something that's making it to prime time, then maybe we will not make it to the lifetime that we are looking for to having in next few years. We can't see that, we can't visualize that, because climate change is there to affect us. So because of little time left, I'm not going to divide you in different groups, but what we can do is I'll give you 10 minutes. So you have 3 teams. Initially, maybe, people sitting here in this row, your team is carbon markets and policy instruments. Now, there is a policy coming up in Pakistan, right? And then there's a policy that can affect textile sector, CBAM. There's an international policy. There's also a policy that the government is planning to make. But then the traders, the exporters in Pakistan, they will be affected from CBAM. So, सर आप लोग मीडिया से हैं, इस जर्नलिस्ट हैं जी. So I'll request journalist community to sit and think about it. What best advocacy strategy can be developed using print media, electronic media, and digital media platforms in Pakistan to explain carbon markets to the people? So there are 2 groups now, not 3. So what we can do is we can merge CBAM and carbon markets policy instruments for this group. For this side, carbon markets and community climate justice. What advocacy strategies should print, digital, and electronic media use to communicate the climate justice communities angle, around carbon markets? What needs to be done? So this is your topic, and your topic is around policy instruments, the policy side, how you will create advocacy strategies, but keep in mind the 3 mediums: digital, print, and electronic. I can explain it in Urdu as well. So we have online participants. आप लोग भी please कोई ना कोई strategy हमें share कर सकते हैं social media पे अपने feedback से. 2 groups में divided है आप लोग. पॉलिसी साइड को और कार्बन मार्केट्स पे आपने देखना है, हमारे मुल्क में भी पॉलिसी आने वाली है. सीबैम एक इंटरनेशनल पॉलिसी है, कैसे अफेक्ट कर सकती है इंडस्ट्री को, और इसके अराउंड इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया, प्रिंट मीडिया, डिजिटल मीडिया की एडवोकेसी स्ट्रेटेजी क्या होनी चाहिए, कैसे आप उसको अवेयरनेस क्रिएट कर सकते हैं पॉलिसी के अराउंड. आपका काम ये है कि कम्युनिटीज जो कार्बन मार्केट से अफेक्ट कार्बन मार्केट्स आ रही हैं, पाकिस्तान में लोग इन्वॉल्व हो रहे हैं, तो कम्युनिटीज के लिए कार्बन मार्केट्स का क्या बेनिफिट हो सकता है, कैसे पोटेंशियल बेनिफिट दे सकती है, और उसके अराउंड आपने अवेयरनेस. बेनिफिट नहीं बताना, सिर्फ आप ये बताएं कि एडवोकेसी स्ट्रैटेजी क्या होगी, कि कम्युनिटीज को किस तरह से एंगेज करने, अवेयरनेस क्रिएट करनी है. आप लोगों के पास 15 मिनट है, 15 मिनट्स हैं. ये पूरा एक ग्रुप है, आप सब मिक्स करेंगे. So this is one group, right? Electronic media, print media, and digital media. Advocacy strategy. I need you to come up with an advocacy strategy, how to create awareness around carbon markets. 15 minutes because of short time, and then identify one group leader who can explain the advocacy strategy to us. So आप लोग प्लीज आगे आ जाएं, जो पीछे बैठे हुए हैं प्लीज अगर ग्रुप वर्क में इंटीग्रेट हो जाएं. After that, after group work, we'll have certificate distribution ceremony. जी, एक चार्ट ले लें. I would request SDPI team to please facilitate. How was your podcast recording? So I'll be this. No, but your perspective.
सबसे पहले तो पब्लिक को मोटिवेट करें कि इनको अवेयर करें कि कार्बन मार्केट और क्लाइमेट चेंज है क्या, इसके क्या नुकसान हो रहे हैं, कैसे लिमिट
Sorry, this group, this side, you are going to work on policy instruments. बेशक CBAM और policy को mix कर ले, मैंने merge कर दिए हैं क्योंकि आप दो ही sides पे काम कर रहे हैं. इनका climate justice और equity की तरफ.
दूसरी चीज ये कि जो अवेयरनेस की बात की है कुछ सेशंस वगैरह हम करेंगे कॉलेजेस लेकिन उसको इंटरलिंक किस तरह से करेंगे दो चीजें सबसे पहली चीज ये एकेडमिया रिसर्च बेस्ड काम करेंगे दूसरा काम ये होगा कि जो सोसाइटीज है यूनिवर्सिटीज लोकल सिविल सोसाइटीज उनको इंगेज करना बिल्कुल ये अभी कैसे आपने एक चीज नोट किया होगा ना ये यूथ असेंबलीज बनी होगी मैं को डिप्टी हेड हूं यूथ असेंबली का तो वहाँ पे हम पूरे पाकिस्तान लेवल पे जो है ना प्रोविंशियल यूथ असेंबलीज को नेशनल असेंबलीज को स्टार्ट कर दिया सेलिब्रेशन से हम काम करेंगे तीसरी चीज हो गया चौथी चीज हमने जो कहा कि इंडस्ट्रियल ब्लूम जो आएगा जो एक शौक आएगा तो उसको हम क्या लिंक करेंगे तमाम जो है ना उसी चीज के 17 गोल्स है इस चीज के 17 गोल्स को हम क्या लिंक करके गोल्स को ले गया हमारा जो एंगेजमेंट का जो वे है वो भी सच है कैमरा जो है ना पाकिस्तान इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया रेगुलेटरी उससे हम जो है इन सबको अवेयरनेस देंगे उसमें इलेक्ट्रॉनिक भी आ जाएगा आपका जो प्रिंट भी आ जाएगा वो आपका सोशल मीडिया भी आ जाएगा वो जो इसके अलावा हमने देखा है जो पीटीए है पीटीए के थ्रू से ना मैसेज जाते हैं उसको हम लास्ट पॉइंट मेरा ये चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्स उनको इंगेज रखेंगे हम नेशनल स्टेक होल्डर्स की पॉलिसीज में जिसमें गवर्नमेंट भी होगी आपकी हेल्थ से मिनिस्ट्रीज आपकी इन्वायरमेंटल जो है ना इन्वायरमेंटल मिनिस्ट्रीज तमाम मिनिस्ट्रीज को इन्वॉल्व करना है क्योंकि स्टेक होल्डर्स है ना अवेयरनेस बिना अवेयरनेस काम है सारी पब्लिक एंगेजमेंट है ना
Just please summarize
समाज का
आप अपने नाम से एक एक पॉइंट वो बाद में रिपीट करेंगे हमने बताया कम्युनिटी बेनिफिटिंग इंटरवेंशन प्लस बिजनेस कम्युनिटी अवेयरनेस सारी बातें आपने कर दी कि एडवोकेसी कैसे होगी बाकी चीजें कैसे जो क्लाइमेट जस्टिस का कंपोनेंट है कि हाउ टू मोबिलाइज अ कम्युनिटी के वो कैसे डिमांड करे कि क्लाइमेट जस्टिस क्या है उसमें हमारे पास ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग है एनवायरमेंटल ट्राइब्यूनल हर जिले में मौजूद है मगर क्या डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल और लोकल लेवल पे मौजूद है मगर मसालेती काउंसिल जरूर मौजूद है हर अदालत में जिले की अदालत में मसालेती काउंसिल है हमें जो है मसाले की काउंसिल के अंदर इन्वायरमेंटल मसाले की काउंसिल जिसमें जाकर जिस तरह आम एक अदालत जो है ये कंज्यूमर कोर्ट है जैसे आप एक वाइट पेपर के ऊपर अपनी एप्लीकेशन लिख के देते हैं और जो वायलेटर होता है जिसमें आपको सीडीए के आपके खिलाफ एक दर्ज के ऊपर एक एप्लीकेशन दी गई ट्राइब्यूनल सीडीए को 15 लाख रुपए का जुर्माना रख के नहीं काट दिया और उसी ट्राइब्यूनल जो अदालत उसने एप्लीकेशन दी गई रद्द करने के बाद वो 15 लाख रुपए जुर्माना होगा मगर आप राजस्थान में क्या हुआ
all the points there.
सही है
Yes. That's true. So I'm requesting in next 2 to 3 minutes to you wind up, please, and so we can have the presentations and wrap up on time.
इसको दो तरीके से करेंगे। एक में जो है टारगेट ऑडियंस कौन सी है, दूसरे में जो है ना हम एंगेजमेंट कर
इसको उठाएंगे, खराब हो जाएगा।
सर मेरी बात मेरा पॉइंट है कि हमारे चार्ट पेपर थोड़े से ब्रांच होने चाहिए।
वो बना लेंगे, बना ले, वो आप बना ले, आप बना ले। नहीं उनको छोड़ देना, मैं करूँगा, आप बनाए बिना उसको डिस्प्ले भी करेंगे। ओके, एक बना लेंगे। नहीं आप एक काम करना, कुछ दरख्त लगा दे, कुछ समंदर, कुछ ग्लेशियर, कुछ ये ना ये ह्यूमन बना के ना एक सर्कल बना दे, ठीक है? बस ठीक है, आराम से। बस ठीक है, हाँ बना ले आप।
ठीक है जी, तो कौन सा ग्रुप रेडी है? बस आप लोग बेशक ना लिखें, बता दें बेशक। जी मैं इसलिए चाह रही हूँ। जी सो ओके, ये वाला ग्रुप आप लोग बेशक लिखते लिखते ही बता देंगे क्या कर रहे हैं। एक बंदा जो है वो शेयर कर दे प्लीज, माइक यूज करते हुए। यस प्लीज जितना जल्दी कीजिए, हम रैप अप कर सकें टाइम पे। So we have this group 1. They will be sharing their advocacy strategy on print, electronic, and digital media, on carbon markets and policy instruments. How they plan to do the advocacy. जी sir.
अच्छा ये
सॉरी, अगर आप सब बैठ जाएं प्लीज अपनी सीट्स पे, आप लोग अपनी सीट्स पे बैठ जाएं, थोड़ी सी खामोशी कर लें। So we are initiating the group presentations. Yes, please.
अच्छा, हमने 8 स्टेप्स जो हैं एडवोकेसी के आइडेंटिफाई किए हैं और उसमें बेसिकली दे फोकस ऑन ऑडियंसेस potential carbon traders who could be buyers and sellers, or media organizations itself and think tank organizations like SDPI. इसमें सबसे जो first foremost step है, but we have focused is advocacy plan में identify target audience. Which kind of audience we want to reach for advocating the case of carbon markets. और उसमें audience में जो है target audience में आपका communities भी आ सकते हैं. It could be farming organizations, farming bodies, farmers associations, communities itself who can engage in carbon credit development programs in their areas. और इसमें आपका गवर्नमेंट भी हो सकता है, इसमें अकेडमिया हो सकता है, यूनिवर्सिटीज होती हैं, where we can build up awareness about carbon credits and their importance, potential, economic potential, environmental benefits whatsoever. अच्छा, उसके बाद है clarity of carbon market policy. इसके बाद है crafting key messages. This is basically a second step for as a part of advocacy to persuade potential investors or traders or communities to engage in this carbon credit markets, to develop different programs. There needs to be crafting messages which could be very persuasive and very effective messages that can bring them into actions and engage with different organizations who can offer developing carbon credit projects. इसके अलावा highlight exactly. अच्छा, इसमें हमने ये फोकस किया है कि हमें हाईलाइट करनी पड़ेगी कि which areas are there which can be basically targeted for developing carbon credits, और कौन से ऐसे सेक्टर्स है, उसमें वेटलैंड्स भी हो सकते हैं, इसमें फॉरेस्ट्री हो सकती है, इसमें बायोडाइवर्सिटी कंजर्वेशन हो सकती है, efficient soil management हो सकती है. Whatever area which can help us to sink carbons, then definitely that can be targeted. Wetlands are very much important in this. आपके build partnership with media organizations, think tank organizations. अच्छा, इसमें जो ऐसी organizations which have the capacity in terms of carbon markets, उनको भी हम target करेंगे, क्योंकि they have basically expertise and they have the expert views who can be part of basically voices for the stories. अच्छा, develop content to support exactly. उसके बाद है content type जो हमारा होगा वो कौन सा होगा. Definitely advocacy के लिए we need to carry out different activities. इसमें different programs हो सकते हैं, debates होते हैं, speech competitions होती है, vlogs हो सकते हैं आपके, इसके अलावा documentary competitions हो सकती हैं, और features हो सकते हैं, news stories जो investigative news stories हो सकती हैं, strong case studies होती हैं, वो हो सकती हैं, जिस तरह सिंध में जो है जो आपका मैनग्रूव्स का जो प्रोग्राम है उसको हम हाईलाइट कर सकते हैं कि these are the initiatives which can be replicated, scaled up in different areas. चूंकि पाकिस्तान.
So I have one question.
अच्छा, let me finish one point, one last point. Media must engage with civil society organizations for developing and launching media fellowships.
Right.
Encouraging journalists to raise the case of
that's very interesting. So just one question, and then group 2, it's your turn, and I'd request you to wrap up in 3 to 4 minutes. So just one question, and I'd like you to think about it after today's training, and this is also going to be sort of feedback for us as well. Firstly, I'd request all of you to use your LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, tagging STPI, and give your feedback about today's training. Secondly, after today's training, we are expecting stories from you, from your side. So we do look forward to receiving some stories, whether it's in the form of print media, whether you're planning on doing a talk show on carbon markets, and how do you plan to do it. I know you have the plan, but since you have developed this plan, so I do look forward to receiving your messages that, okay, we are having this show, we are having this reporting, or we are reporting the story, so we will be disseminating your stories as well. So this is just one aspect that I wanted to share. Now group 2, just in next 3 to 4 minutes, wrap up the strategy. Thank you.
Group 2 has to work on.
Ali, you have to use the mic. We have online participants.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
in the name of our Lord Almighty Allah, whose bounties proliferate and whose grandeur we cannot gauge. Ladies and gentlemen, the group 2 was to present on climate markets and climate justice. So the way our strategy has been developed is that we are going to have public motivation and education through climate literacy. Climate literacy is now gaining momentum among the masses. Even schools are starting thinking about that. Provincial governments are working on that to align the syllabi of the school level textbooks to have proper, chapters on related to climate. So in that context, we will have digital stories focusing human elements in climate design. There is a digital platform called the Center Media. You have seen their short documentaries on various aspects, but those done on natural disasters are one of the best ever done to highlight human element in the stories. If that strategy is adopted, we can better highlight this complex concept of and then climate justice. The third is effective community engagement through targeted strategies, including youth, representatives, stakeholders of sectors like health, agriculture, food, and security. And then we have fifth is community benefiting projects. Like 10 billion tree tsunami, it gave an incentive and ownership to local community of the local areas. With ownership of the local communities, there is no concept of any intervention to succeed. So the sixth is use of religious leaders to influence public opinion. How religious leaders can help us, the Juma sermons or the Sunday sermons in the churches, the prayers in the mandirs, in gurdwaras, even in the Jains and Burmese that are living in Pakistan, the Bengalis and others. Everyone has their own faith, their religious places exist here. So these are the point of coherence, the point of unity where they gather. And using those point of unities, we can easily influence them, educate them on this issue, and then put this element in their mind, in their opinion, to seek justice, climate justice in every intervention. Then providing any legal platform. So this is the last intervention. Why legal platform? We have environmental tribunals where public submit their application on a single piece of paper. On that piece of paper, actions are taken. Very many private sector violating environmental laws, they are being charged. Like Barrier Town was fined 5 million rupees. 50 million rupees, the highest ever fine on a private sector, so the housing society. Why? Because of the awareness of the masses. So this has to be done. A legal platform can benefit both journalists, community media, even private sector to seek their voice for climate justice.
Thank you so much, Ali. So I think बस असल में टाइम खत्म हो गया so thank you so much group 1 group 2 I think we do have very engaging strategies आपका बहुत अच्छा आइडिया था मीडिया फेलोशिप्स का आपका बहुत अच्छा आइडिया था कि किस तरह से प्रायोरिटाइज करना चाहिए सेकेंडली आपका आप लोगों के ग्रुप का जो sermons wala idea tha or engaging the religious communities so I think that's very interesting अभी ये strategies तो आप लोगों ने बनाई बैठ के काम किया और अभी हम इसका देखेंगे कि कितना ज्यादा ये implement होती हैं trainings का purpose ये होता है कि आप लोग सीखें और जाके किस तरह से implement करते हैं हमें भी पता लगता है if we were able to better communicate the technicalities around certain topic so we do expect you to come up with engaging stories and strategies advocacy strategies आप लोग अपने भी departments में बनाए so अभी we'll request Dr. Abid Suleri he's joining us for the certificate distribution ceremony so thank you so much everyone आप लोगों के टाइम के लिए और आप लोगों के एंगेजमेंट के लिए यहाँ पे और हम लोग आप लोगों से कनेक्टेड रहेंगे over WhatsApp over emails so Dr. Abid if you can please join us here for the certificate distribution Miss Anam Fatma जी प्लीज डॉक्टर खालिद सालिया मोहम्मद उजैर राना थैंक यू। मोहम्मद उजैर राना। आफ्ताब जहान। बतूल। जाहिद इकबाल। जाहिद इकबाल। मोहम्मद सलीम। आपको जो रह गए वो मैं पकड़ाती हूँ। कहाँ गया जाहिद इकबाल? सॉरी। जी जी। फिर के रखे हैं। नायाब अवान वो भी चली गई है। आसिफ मोहम्मद। मोहम्मद सॉरी। अच्छा बासित खान जो रहेगी। फिर रुके। सोनिया। सोनिया रियासत। सोनिया प्लीज आ जाइए। रानिया। प्लीज आप लोग आते जाइए ताकि हम रैप अप कर ले। रानिया। फयाज गिल। अच्छा प्लीज आप आ जाइए। आयशा नाज। असगर हयात। हयात नहीं है। उसामा मलिक। शुएब निजामी। साकिब साकिब अली। जी शुएब साहब का दे दीजिए। थैंक यू। फैसल अजहर अली। असफर अली। सनाउल्लाह सईद अहमद नहीं सॉरी सादुल्लाह सईद अहमद। सादुल्लाह नहीं है शायद। उमर बिन आसिफ नहीं है। मोहम्मद तैयब। फाइजा तहसीन। फाइजा। अदनान हमीद। रक्षंदा। शिराज अली। आप रुक जाइए पहले। अदील सईद। सलाहुद्दीन चौधरी।
देख ले नीचे नीचे बैठ नीचे होके नीचे होके। आज मैं भी ट्रेनी बन गया हूँ।
मोहम्मद आसिफ।
I learned new things.
थैंक यू। जी अली जाबिर। सो आप में से जिनके सर्टिफिकेट्स रह गए हैं वो हमसे कलेक्ट कर लें बाद में। अभी आप यही। सो थैंक यू सो मच। जिनके रह गए हैं हम लोग उनको सेंड कर देंगे। वो लोग हमसे इन टच हो जाइए डायरेक्टली। किसी के अगर स्पेलिंग्स का इशू है तो प्लीज बता दीजिएगा हम उसको करेक्ट कर देंगे। Thank you so much. Online participants के लिए भी thank you so much. T for the in-person pictures. उबैद आपके साथ in touch होंगे, अली जाबिर होंगे in touch, वो आपके share करें. Tea is served outside. Please do.